3, 2.
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. What a wonderful session it's been since 12. We've had a lineup of speakers from across the globe sharing their perspectives of higher education, and we heard from the excellent speech on mythology from Devdutt Patnaik ji. An amazing speech from a Cognizant's leader. And now we are off to a great start of the higher education track. I am Supreet Nagraju, Head of Education from Adobe India and South Asia region. We've all heard the saying that when you work tirelessly, the universe too conspires to help you in every step of the way towards the path of excellence. I was blessed with excellent teachers and friends, and I'm sure you've all been too. And every walk of our life, wherever we have had a critical juncture and the change in the course of our life have happened by these torchbearers who guided us, mentored us to the next phase of life. Augmenting this new, usual today is technology and digital. And I'm delighted to welcome you all to this thought leadership event where we will be discussing umpteen opportunities, challenges that we are facing today and how we address them through various collaborative approaches through industry, academia, skilling as an opportunity, and how do we address entrepreneurship as an area. At the beginning of the session, let me start and invite one of the most respected leaders from the Education Ministry, Srimati Suchi Sharma ji, Principal Secretary, Higher Education, Government of Rajasthan, to share a few words on what, according to her, is creativity and how we could address some of these new challenges that we're facing in the current pandemic and the way forward in terms of skilling and digital in the state of Rajasthan and across India. Madam Suchi Sharma, please.
My namaskar to all, and a great thanks to Elets as well as Adobe for inviting me in this Education Leader Summit. For me, education should be viewed at from a viewpoint of not only livelihoods, but also life itself. That is, a holistic view of education is needed, and it is a need of the hour. Therefore, thinking differently is the responsibility of the states to introduce the input of life also in the education, so that education makes all happy and it builds a happier society and healthier society. With this view, we have introduced a new subject, Anandam, in our state. Anandam is more doing instead of learning or cramming and appearing in exams. Anandam subject has been introduced throughout the state for all the streams in higher and technical education. Anandam is basically relating the students, connecting the students with the community problems. The students will be taking up the community service projects. It can be, the subject can be environment, can be empowerment of deprived sections. It can be something in the field of health and hygiene, in the field of sanitation. Any community related problems they will be taking up. They will try to understand the problem. They will try to search the solution of the problem in a group. They will be interacting with the community, and this way they will try to learn what is community all about and how to relate what they are studying with the community. This way we will be making our students more happy, as it is giving a scope to their creative capabilities, their imaginations, their leadership abilities, and Anandam is going to make the education holistic. This is this is needed for a whole state, and we have introduced for all the streams and for all the students in the state and for all the semesters. And it will be evaluated. The marks will be given in the subject. It will be shown in the report card. And I think employers will be happy to have such a lot for their as employees, because they will be more emotionally robust, they will be more empathetic, and they will be more socially responsible. The other thing which is the need of the hour is we should be very much welcoming to the new technologies in education system, so that the education is more accessible. It is accessible to the remotest area. It is accessible to the poorest of the poor. And best practices, best lectures are available to all the students. We already had started working in this direction. We introduced e-learning before COVID also. We were trying. In fact, we had dearth of faculty, and looking to the financial constraints and the problems in the recruitment of the faculty, we will have to manage the dearth of the faculty through e-learning system. So we recorded the lectures of the faculty and uploaded on YouTube or some other platform. And this work, which we had done before COVID, we had started before COVID, is now so much useful. It has become rather compulsion during these COVID times when we are unable to hold physical classes. We have been successful in introducing the e-lectures. We have recorded almost 1 lakh lectures in higher and technical education and uploaded. Though it needs a little quality improvement also, we are trying in that direction. But the things have started, and I am very hopeful that we will be doing a great service to the poorest of the students and those and the students who are unable to access to the good classes, good lectures. They will be benefited by this e-learning system of our state. I must congratulate Adobe, which is doing wonderful work in creative and digital learning. Thank you.
Fabulous, piece of lecture, and you are sharing your ideas of Anandam, Srimati Suchi Sharma ji. Thank you so much for joining us. Our next topic of discussion is one of the most hottest topics being discussed in higher education, a problem area, challenge. At the same time, higher education in India has taken it with all embraced, and we're going all out to address this problem, which is primarily around how do you take digital education to the next level, from physical to digital to a completely online engagement model. Let me invite one of the most prominent speakers in the e-learning industry, a formidable player who's been spearheading some of the mission mode projects for Government of India, Dr. Mangal Sundar, head of the Department of Indian Institute of Technology, Madras, and also the chief coordinator of DTH Swayamprabha. A quick introduction to Dr. Mangal Sundar. He currently holds the post of head of the Department of Chemistry in Indian Institute of Technology, Madras, and is also one of the key spearheaders of direct-to-home television-based learning, or what we know as Swayamprabha today. Prior to this, he was a co-founder of NPTEL, National Program on Technology Enhanced Learning, which helped create more than 2,000 courses in engineering, technology, humanities, management, and sciences by faculty members from IITs, IIScs, and 40 plus premier institutions in India. He is currently a member of Swayamprabha board of the ministry responsible for digital content development and online certification in India. Theoretically a chemist by profession, PhD from McGill University, Canada, and with about 25 years of teaching and research at Indian Institute of Technology, Madras. Dr. Mangal Sundar, please address the audience. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you. I am very happy to join the Adobe Education Summit 2020 and to discuss the issues on e-learning as I'm aware of and as I'm practicing. It is my great pleasure and privilege to join all of you and also to share with you some of my experiences. So let me start my presentation. I hope you are able to see the full slides. The topic that I would spend in the next 15-20 minutes is the topic that all of us are very familiar and all of us feel it's important: digital content development, online teaching, learning, and best practices. My address and my coordinates and email contacts are given. And I was associated with the largest initiatives of the digital development, content development in India for the last 20 years as a coordinator and sometimes also as faculty members. Okay. So just one slide briefly to tell you what has happened in the last 20 years, that there are major initiatives in the country that you are all familiar with. And if not, this is also a point to become very familiar with. Thousands of courses are now made available on a digital platform by the Government of India. And all of it started with the National Program on Technology Enhanced Learning, NPTEL, by the 7 IITs in 2003 and the Indian Institute of Science. They prepared courses, engineering and science courses of 40 lecture duration and put them online, both web-based and video-based. This was followed later to cover other areas of education, other subjects and other disciplines like arts, commerce, humanities, social sciences, and all the others through what is known as the National Mission on Education through Information and Communication Technology. NMEICT had three components, namely the component on content, the component on devices, and then the component on the content, devices, as well as connectivity. All three components were addressed. Now, NMEICT has been replaced by the current project of the Ministry of Education known as the SWAYAM and SWAYAM Prabha. And SWAYAM stands for Study Web Actives by Young and Aspiring Minds. We have lots and lots of education, content, digital content, and I will also tell you a little bit about how we go about doing that. Okay. Now, in a typical classroom, when we teach a course or in a university setting when students are on campus, how does the system driven, the teacher driven learning look like? Yes, you all give the outline of lectures to the students, you give the syllabus, and then you tell them that they must have already studied certain things, preliminary requirements, and then you schedule the classes, you give the exams every now and then, and finally also you give quizzes and assignments, sometimes online, sometimes offline, and follow this by an examination and grading. What is implicit in all of these things is what the student is supposed to learn, the outcome of learning. We don't say it explicitly. The syllabi in the past have always said you study the subject this much. However, in the present time, last 10, 15 years after the arrival of the internet and after many open courses being made available, you can see that the design of the electronic content by a teacher must be to facilitate the learner to learn just in time, not always when the teacher teaches, because the student may not necessarily be in the same class, may not necessarily be in the same university, or sometimes he or she may take courses from other sources. Therefore, you, even as a teacher, as a university service provider or education provider, you may have to design courses for students who are not in the platform, who are not in the classrooms. Therefore, to learn just in time, there are certain protocols, and the outcome-based learning is the first and the most important thing that you have to worry about. So when we say technology-enhanced teaching and learning, there are two components to it. The teacher has to understand the technology. The student has to understand both the technology as well as the content delivered by the teacher in order to do better in his or her career. So there are many, many tools which are available. The electronic learning is supplemented or is supported by so many of them. A few which I have given here. The learning management systems, or what are called the organizers of all the learning content. The networking component, which is the component through which the students will interact with others as well as with their teachers. Then there are the networking components through the online discussion forums. This can happen outside of the classroom. Then you have online conferencing tools like the present one, in which the video is being transferred to you, already pre-recorded, but then I will be available for you to answer the questions and to discuss. So these online conferencing tools. And then there is the offline-online combination known as the massive open online course format, which the SWAYAM and the NPTEL are now advancing to many, many institutions, thousands of institutions. And the University Grants Commission has also made it mandatory for the acceptance of courses developed under the MOOCs to the colleges. All of these are redefining the landscape of teaching and learning very, very rapidly. Now, remember, only 25 years ago, we didn't have many of these things, but this is about 5 generations in electronic development. That's what I would say. Since 1990, now it's almost 30 years, television, email, internet, mobile, and Google have all arrived. And of course, in this year, we also have the unwelcome COVID, but for which we would actually have had this summit in the presence of each other. We are now online. The universities of the present today will have to deal with every one of these things, will have to use every one of these things. And in India, I mean, at least 100 million students born in this era can actually study, can actually be helped through the digital means. And therefore, the number of teachers, the 200,000 teachers or 300,000 higher education teachers, reaching out to 100 million students is not possible at all except through the online methods, except through the digital and e-learning methods. Remember, about only 30 years ago, on the internet, when things started coming in, universities and professors became very interested. Internet started getting courses added by the professors using HTMLs and PDFs. And only in 30 years, we have more than 100,000 courses probably from several countries. And in India alone, we have got thousands of courses. And all of this means so much information is available, so much information is being created by digital exponents. And as teachers, it is important for us to recognize the most important fact that this is all information. There are beautiful discussions on how the course should be designed, how the teaching learning process should proceed, how interruptions should happen, what are the mid-course student expectations and student learning processes, how do we verify them. All these things are addressed by a very large discussion on the pedagogical and andragogical. Pedagogical generally refers to the child level learning, children level learning, where is a directed learning, and the andragogical essentially means adult learning, where it is a self-directed learning, and the teacher being a facilitator and a mentor and a guide by the side, whereas in the pedagogy, the teacher is the sage on the stage, if you have to say, use what is known as the flipped class terminology. The teachers are very important as directors. The teachers are very important here as facilitators. And these two methods have been very detailed by the two of the exponents, the fundamental contributors to this whole project, Professor Benjamin Bloom on the educational taxonomy referring to pedagogical methods, and Malcolm Knowles on the andragogical methods. These are important for us to understand, even in some elementary form, to design the e-learning courses. Now, typically, what are the challenges in the designing of the e-learning course? Many. It's an intense time-consuming process. And generally, when e-learning is a supplement to the university learning, you ask all these questions. Should we do whole course, or should we teach only the lecture notes and supplementary notes we provide and let the students learn after their classes? Or should we provide interactive tutorials? Or should we do assignments and quizzes only on the online? Or in addition to all these things, should we actually record our lectures and put them on the video content? All these things are discussed when there are options for the students to learn otherwise by coming to the campus. At the present time, and also probably for considerable amount of time in the future, the students may not come to the campus. It is important to design all of these things. And after doing all these things, how do you interact with the students, and how do you find out what is the effect of learning? What is the effective learning that the students have had? What is the impact of your methods? How do we do this? Are we connecting to the students through emails? Are we connecting through the chat? Are we connecting them as well as connecting to them through forum-initiated discussions and discussion threads? These things are all time consuming. It is important for faculty members to sit down and discuss and do this in a collective, an institutional framework, and not as an individual effort. And sometimes you have to employ people who are very good as teaching assistants, your own students in the higher classes as assistants to the lower classes. And sometimes you can use external content facilitators and tutors as well. The e-learning component requires all of them. And what are the assessment mechanisms? At the end of all of this, how would you assess that the students have learned what you want them to learn? There are policies of the institutions on the evaluation mechanisms, but in the online learning process, there are multiple ways of doing that. Continuous evaluation. Do we periodically announce quizzes, midterms, and so on? Do we do semester examinations only with both objective and analytic skills tested? Do we use machine-corrected online examinations, that is what is called the multiple choice questions, and often misunderstood as the ineffective way, not a very efficient way of testing the student? That's because the papers have been designed that way. Please remember, the world's toughest examinations, the certificate examinations, are generally online examinations. Therefore, the design of the examination, the design of the assessment pattern is very, very important, and not just based on the tools that are available. The tools have to be used in very efficient manner. Multiple choices need not have to have only one correct answer, for example. They can have multiple answers right. And if you put that in, the students do not anymore answer by eliminating questions or answers, but they have to think through the process. A typical component in all these things to do this as an e-learning project to a university or to a system requires components of all these things. The organizer is essentially a learning management system that even the sponsor of the whole event, the Adobe's education event, provides one of the best e-learning platforms, provides tools for every one of these activities, for text files, for creation, for figures and graphs creation, for creating animations and movies related to the topic of interest, and for creating the audio, video, and edit audio, video. Every component that you have here has a tool that is created by the e-learning content designers, and Adobe provides you probably the most comprehensive suite that we have found out, and we have been engaged with them in many, many years for the NPTEL project, for the SWAYAM project, and for the NME-ACT project. Therefore, it is important to design these things. And also sometimes it is important to record your own lectures and give it to the students who may not be there in the class, even online or offline. And when you record the lectures, you can also do post-editing. For example, this is a typical recording in a small studio where I write on the board, and suppose I make a mistake that the KB was not included in the Boltzmann equation. And I found out that at the end of the lecture that, I didn't do the KB. Well, my editor will now go through the entire editorial. I mean, Adobe has a beautiful tool called the Adobe Premiere. And you play this on, and you come to that particular point, and you insert your KB there, and you correct your lecture, and then you publish. Therefore, post-editing, nonlinear editing, recording, and correcting this, and slicing them, all these things are fundamental tools that the teachers should become familiar with. They don't have to operate all these things, but they should know what is capable. In summary, I would say the remote learning and innovation that is actually now furthered by the Government of India through the Ministry of Education, the SWAYAM platform, has all these components. And one example of the large number of courses online is the number of courses that you can find under the NPTEL Open Online Courses. Please look into these if you haven't done before, and you would see that these courses have all the different e-learning components. There is a course content, which is text file as well as a video lecture file. There are assignments for self-assessment as well as for understanding the subject in a much better way. And then there are discussion forums which are created among the students and are monitored. And occasionally the faculty members would put input to the discussion forum, and often they will also come out and hang out in the air for the students who are learning from remote locations. And all of this is finally completed with the certification examination, which is also a proctored examination. Therefore, the e-learning component requires understanding every one of these things. The video lectures are extremely simple to make. Any video conference tool that you have has a record button, and all you need is a camera in front of you, a good camera, and a reasonably good audio in the computer, and you start recording. And so let me come to the last point of this lecture or this presentation. Everything that you do, teaching, learning, please remember, in the right way, learning follows the teaching, but not necessarily always immediately. The learning may happen much, much later, but the teaching is extremely important, and the teaching is a short duration delivery. Learning, on the other hand, is a very, very long and often lifelong experience. Therefore, the learning must be facilitated at all times, all times. Digital and e-content development and e-learning is the only method for a country like India, where you have hundreds of millions of students, both young and old, and also adults to learn, and they have less than 1 million teachers. Therefore, it is important to have access to the classroom on demand, and our teachers and all of you have to produce the content that fits your description of the science or the technology or the philosophy, and it gives you a cornerstone for the learning component to the country. I hope all of you will contribute to this one way or the other. I thank you very much for your kind attention, as well as for the opportunity that Adobe gave me to share some of my ideas and experiences with you. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Dr. Mangal Sundar. That was really insightful and thoughts that were provocating with respect to how do you deliver experiential learning using digital learning platforms, e-learning techniques, content creation as tools, and learning analytics to deliver cutting-edge, learning outcomes for science, technology, management, and various fields. Now, moving on to the next subject, which is core of design. I have a very interesting speaker who's coming from a variety of experience in the e-commerce field, from product creation organizations like Adobe. He's worked with Flipkart. He's worked with VC Sci partners and Arogya Setu, Make My Trip. Yes, I'm talking about Jaideep Datta. Mr. Jaideep Datta, welcome to Adobe Education Leadership Summit. Mr. Jaideep Datta currently holds the role of Senior Vice President Design at MakeMyTrip.com. Most of you would be visiting the Make My Trip app and the websites for booking your tickets. So that's the platform that's been powered by Jaideep and his team. So he brings with him an extensive experience in the design practice, and he works with the current firm at Make My Trip, leading the design practice at one of the ubiquitous online travel brands, both Make My Trip and Go Ibibo. He's the founder and curator of Design Up Conference, arguably the largest and the most influential design in tech festival in South Asia. So without much ado, let me welcome Jaideep Datta onto the podium and share his insights and thoughts on design as a career. Mr. Jaideep, please.
Good afternoon. I'm Jay Datta. I head the design teams of Make My Trip and Go Ibibo. I'm sure many of you have used us to go places. I'm also the founder and curator of Design Up Conference, arguably Southeast Asia's largest and most influential design event. I've been lucky to be part of Adobe India's journey, heading and growing the design team in the early years, and subsequently Flipkart. Make My Trip, Flipkart, Adobe, WhatsApp, Arogya Setu, Paytm, Google. You know what's common between all of them? Most of them reside somewhere in your pocket, just a swipe and a tap away. So Inc. magazine says that in 2020, We unlock, tap, swipe our phones about 2,617 times a day on an average. Don't ask me how they came to that number, but that's about 2.7 times per minute, discounting 7 hours of sleep. Did I just see you reach out for your phone? Over 50 million users visited Make My Trip every month before the pandemic hit. And in the middle of the pandemic and the lockdown, over 50 million people downloaded Arogya Setu in just 13 days. That's a world record, beating the previous one held by Pokemon Go. Before the pandemic put a pause, DesignUp was growing at a rate of 186% year on year. So why am I throwing all these numbers at you? Because today, more than ever before, in the history of humankind, we engage with design. Good design, bad design, invisible design, okay design. Billions engage with design via phones, tablets, computers, name it. And each of them engage with design more frequently and in much more diverse ways, often as frequently as twice a minute. You might say they're engaging with tech, but remember, you cannot simply consume tech without design. I always keep saying, design makes tech edible. Needless to say, design has never mattered more than ever before. Never has its reach or responsibility been so high. And never before has good design education mattered as much as today. That's what I'm here to talk about. And a few shifts and ideas to leverage on the new possibilities, the new opportunities. So let me start with sharing a few slides. I promise it'll be less than a dozen. I'll be keeping it short and fast. Design in tech. That's the way a lot of us describe it. Coined first by John Maeda, I think that probably is an all-encompassing term. It's a broad term and it's a growing term and a suite of specializations and subject areas within the larger piece. Design in tech encompasses things which you might have heard of. I mean, I'm sure you heard of everything here, but some of them have been around for decades. Human-computer interaction, for example, or HCI, interaction design. You might have encountered product design in its physical form, earlier known as industrial design as well. Product design has now become digital product design, digital service design, services design per se. There is so much more happening. Design ops, UX writing, UX research. The field within the design in tech is growing rapidly. So as a part of DesignUp, we did something called the Deconstruct. Deconstruct is a study, it's a survey, it's a lot of one-on-one interactions that we had with design leaders. And we had some interesting insights, and there were a lot of insights, but I'm going to share with you just one slice. I'll also share with you where you can go and download and read your own report. It's perfectly free, and it was also supported by Adobe. So the first thing that we heard about, which we had always suspected, I'm sure you suspected that as well, no parent ever forced their child to study design. Of course, that is changing because children, as they grow up, are opting to study design. On the left, the bars that you see are undergrad areas of studies. The biggest area there is engineering. The second biggest is design. And there's a whole bunch of smaller areas, like, for example, fine arts and architecture and management studies and so on. On the right, the very first big bar that you see right on the top is no master's degree, which means that someone would have probably done a bachelor's degree in a certain area, but is today working in design in tech without going for a master's degree. But below that, you will see a whole bunch of smaller bits. The first one is interaction design. So they would have done a master's in interaction design, for example. There are other areas that also includes anthropology and psychology. So let's look at what's been happening and what our study showed last year, that is 2019. What it showed is that roughly a third of people in design, in technology, are from an engineering background. The second third have a basic degree or or have studied in design. Now, interestingly, of those third, roughly 45% are not opting to do a master's degree, but a good 55% of people are actually opting to do a master's degree. And a majority of them is in interaction design, but you would have outliers like psychology and anthropology as well. When it comes to design, a majority of designers, and I'll probably deconstruct this for you to make it easier. So this is the view from the engineering side. There were other things like industrial design, product design, management, etc., and they've come into design still. If you look at the design slicing, and if you deconstruct that, what is happening is roughly 65% of designers have opted not to do a master's. But a lot of them have opted, and these might have been people who have done a bachelor's in graphic design, fashion design. They would have opted to do a master's in interaction design, in product design, and so on. Of course, the story is very different when you talk about the last, roughly a third, where they are doing way more master's courses to bridge the gaps and get into a design in tech world. So I think we also had this thing called the 6.5 takeaways from the study. And the 6.5 takeaway, of course, was design careers are going mainstream. What we saw was that startups, dropouts, and of course, the rise of design are all symptomatic of two things. One is a disenchantment with routine jobs. The second, the great desire to make impact, create things, not just keep working in a back office system. I think that has been a big force for design and design careers. But there's one more thing which has been a force. And if you look at this, and this is a salary survey by a company called Indifolio, on the left you see graphic and communication design, on the right you see UX and UI design. What is interesting to note is for the same years of experience, a person in the UI and UX design is going to earn significantly higher than her or his peers in graphic and communication design, which is a very established area. And that significant difference is actually significant. And a lot of these guys are getting paid at par with the developer or even more, and getting to do things their way, making a mark on products that they work on. That's another big reason why people are slowly moving, not just slowly, actually pretty fast moving into design in tech. That's the arrow which shows where the overall, just look at those dark blue lines. The light blue lines, in case you cannot read it, indicate roughly 15 to 25 lakhs of salary. And the dark blue lines bars represent 25 lakhs plus of salary. As you can see on the left, there are none of those. So if you want to read more about the design in tech report, the deconstruct report, you can download it for free from www.designup.io. We have a new one coming up, and you will also see it there, and we would love to have you participate and hear your voices, represent your thoughts in the upcoming report. As I said, I'll not bore you with a whole bunch of slides. Coming back, in 2018, writing on Design Up, Patrick Feller from Adobe called India the next frontier of UX design, with 1 billion+ people and a hungry, curious young population willing to create, wanting to make a difference, wanting to create products for their own country. Based on the rise of design and the move of engineers and other professions into design, there are 3 broad shifts that I want to share with you, which you could leverage on if you are thinking, or if you've already been sort of part of the design in tech education journey. One, from campuses to screens. And this is even before the pandemic. What I mean is learning in smaller bite-sized chunks at your own pace, in your own time. For many, this is alongside a full-time work or in the middle of a shift from one domain to another. And they probably cannot take time out to go back to school for a year, 2 years, whatever it means. What it means for educators is that there is no capex, no expensive real estate, less paperwork, less admin. just the razor-sharp focus on quality content and newer hybrid ways of delivery and engaging with the learners. The second part, design thinker to a doer. Of late, a lot of sound bites, writing, and eyeballs are recently around design thinking. But design has always been a verb. It's about doing. It's about putting ideas into real actionable products, services, and things that you engage with. It's about implementation. It's about skills, tools, flows, frameworks, systems. Those have always been important, and those are even more important today, where there are way too many ideas and much less implementation. I think there is a big opportunity for design educationists like yourselves to transform thinkers into craftsmen or thoughtful doers. That's the holy grail. The third, from polytechnics to philosophy. I mean, design has moved out of the polytechnic realm for a fairly long time, but then that's where it used to be once upon a time. And I think there's never been a better opportunity or a need for this curious learners to combine and cross-connect multiple disciplines. As design gets into complex areas, skills, and tools, these guys and tools aren't going to be enough. You know, strategy planning, scenario planning, these become very important. Ethics and philosophy become very important. All design leaders in the Design Up Deconstruct study unanimously spoke about philosophy. Now, just what we do, I mean, not just what we do, but why we do what we do, and what are the likely repercussions of our actions. For those institutions with multiple disciplines, a modular course is a great plus, a way to connect multiple courses, of course. So let me reiterate. One, design matters so much more because we engage with it so much more frequently and at such a scale. Good design is critical. Two, more people from other disciplines are pouring into design. It's a melting pot, and the scope of design in tech is ever expanding. There are lots of opportunities to engage through multiple courses, multiple ways, and multiple systems. Three, there are a few shifts you could leverage on to provide quality education and connected subjects. In closing, there's never been a better time for high quality design education. With that, I would welcome your questions. Thank you for listening.
It's alive.
Thank you so much, Jayadatta, for your insights on what goes into creating a wonderful digital experience, the master strokes on UX and UI that you've created in different parts of the industry will definitely come in useful to upcoming professionals. Thank you so much for that. Moving on to the next topic for today's afternoon is a very interesting subject which has been on the top of the agenda for every higher education institution today. How do I create a cutting edge experience for students who are looking at careers in digital and creative architecture, design, and fashion, which is spiking in terms of demand from an industry standpoint? To discuss this, I'd like to have the privilege of inviting some of the best of the industry leaders and academic leaders in this space. Let me invite each of these speakers in a quick minute. First of them is Sumant Jayakrishnan, who's a leading designer and an architect, and he owns the practice of Sumant Jayakrishnan Design. Second is Dr. Tulika Gupta, Director, Indian Institute of Crafts and Design, Rajasthan. She's been an academician and a practitioner in design and crafts and artisans for quite a while, close to about 3 decades now. Third of it, an e-commerce specialist in design and user experience, Vivek Juwal, Director of Flipkart's Design and UX Practice. Last but not the least, Shika Majumdar, General Manager, Digital Practice at Lifestyle International, coming in from one of the leading brands in the retail fashion industry. And none other than Guru Vaidya, our Manager Solution Consulting, will be the moderator for this session. Guru, over to you and the entire panel.
Hey, thanks a lot, Supreet. And thank you everybody for logging in and joining our event today. So I've got a very distinguished panel, and what I'm going to be doing is I'm going to be asking them one question each, and then I'm going to have a series of common questions for all of them. I'm going to start off today with Dr. Gupta. Dr. Gupta, IICD is one of India's only autonomous institute dedicated to acquiring skills and know-how for crafts and design. Now, India has had a rich tradition and heritage in producing unique craft products. How has this craftsmanship evolved over the years, and how would it evolve further in the future?
Hello, Guru, and thank you for inviting me on this panel. Thanks to Supreet. The question is a very valid question because things are changing, times are changing. Handicrafts have evolved in ways more than one. To begin with, already, we're aware that about 200 to 300 years ago, we had reached a zenith and in the field of crafts, and which is continuing till today. But because of industrialization, as we are aware, a lot of these crafts took a backseat because we couldn't keep pace with it. And the other thing was that because it was more hands-on and it took more time, and thus it was more expensive. And so it sort of took a backseat. There were revivalists who came who felt that, we need to preserve these skills, otherwise they'll get lost. And so they started, there are names like Papul Jaikar and who worked so hard to take crafts to the forefront. But having said that, there was also a feeling of puritanism that let's keep it the way it is. But if that happens, then the craftsman doesn't really get much. How crafts have changed is the other important thing is earlier, for all these crafts, we had patrons. Today we have consumers. So that is a very different mindset. So patrons would pay anything to keep that craft alive. But now consumers want to use the products. So it has to be cheap. There's a very niche market for good handcrafted products. But the day-to-day market has changed. So we do see all these changes, over the past, I must say, more than 100 years or so. Slowly, these changes have crept in. The government, of course, is trying to do its bit. Things sort of survive, they don't survive. And unfortunately, it becomes as if, we have to buy the craft so that we support them. But I think you can't support something till it stands on its own feet. Till how long can you keep supporting it? So now at IICD, the whole idea when the institute started was that we have to create people who are designers, who are good with technology, and who are also managers. I mean, of course, that's too much for a single person to do, but at least one of it should be there so that people come together and collaborate together. And I think the beauty of the current time period is collaboration. Everybody comes together, works together, and they're able to achieve something. So they're designers, they are people good with technology, and they're people good with marketing. And of course, so this is how, now we see the changes in crafts that are happening. Technology, of course, is everywhere. It's helping us to even put ourselves across, like how we are doing right now. Similarly, in the area of crafts. And there were tools, earlier the tools were very manual tools, then came the mechanical sort of tools. And now we do have things that are, digital tools and digital help that is there. So I see no problem in taking help from that, but preserving the skills, because if we let the skills go away, it's difficult for them to come back again. These skills have evolved over generations. It's easy to work in a factory and produce something, but to be able to do it with your bare hands, to be able to weave a fabric, to be able to create an item of pottery or wood is a very special skill. And I think that should stay because we've learned it over generations. And if we just let it go, then we will all be nothing, if the machinery is not around. And India is one of the civilizations that has continued for so long, with the skills that it has. So I see crafts playing a very, very important role today and in the times to come. But we have to nurture it properly. So a lot of changes like this are taking place. We do need patrons to support. We do need people to come forward, come together and support it. And I think it's happening. It's happening also to a large extent. Yeah. Guru, hello. Yeah, so I think there's some problem there. So continuing with what I was saying, that there is a lot that can be done in the craft sector, and IICT is trying to do just that. There are other institutes dedicated to craft, but then they don't do a degree kind of a course. There are small institutes helping the craftspeople. They're across the country. Many people have come together in Gujarat, in Madhya Pradesh, the Handloom School, and Kala Somaya. So there is a lot happening in the craft sector right now. And yeah.
Thank you so much, Dr. Gupta, for sharing your thoughts on that. I think a true testament to our craftsmanship is how even the Queen of England refuses to give back our the Kohinoor diamond, and stubbornly wants to still keep it in, despite repeated efforts to bring that in. And thank you so much for IICD for trying to revive this part of our culture and take and prolong it and make it sustainable in the future. My next question is to Shikha Mazumdar. Hi, Shikha. Shikha, the Landmark Group has over 15 brands of your own. And plus, there are many additional international brands also that you offer. And then you also offer your customers a complete omni-channel experience when it comes to buying, online. So you're creating a lot of content for different screens and platforms. Could you share some insights on how do you overcome this monumental task of content creation?
Thank you, Guru, for that question. Yes, we are a large fashion house, and our offering includes something like Max, which is a value fashion brand, to something like Lifestyle, which is an experience for premium shopping. And we're consistently thinking about the customers, how to reach them, how to engage them, how to ensure that our brands remain on the top of mind recall. And if you would have asked me as a marketer, maybe 12 years back, what are you doing to ensure that top of mind recall for customers is high for your brands all the time? I would have talked about how my stores, which are present in most of the key mall or shopping areas, are an entity in themselves. And when I'm launching one marketing campaign for a season in India is spring, summer, and autumn, winter, and fashion. So I launched the collection in the beginning of the season. There is buzz around that. I use the traditional media as a retailer, such as my storefront, within the store, hoardings, TVCs, print campaigns, magazine, and my job is done. But in 12 years, the way things have changed. Social media, digital has changed the way consumers are absorbing information. The way their exposure has increased, they're increasingly getting information from all around the world, not only India, but right from the center of the fashion capitals. And therefore, the onus is on marketers like us, brands like us, to ensure that we are consistently there for our customers, presenting to them what is of interest to them, and also in the right context. And I'll clarify this with an example. I know there are a lot of students today in the panel. So imagine, if you are preparing yourselves for an interview, and you are just going through your preparation material online. We all do that. So you are targeted with an ad saying that how to ace that interview with the perfect look, or the perfect look for acing that internship interview, vis-a-vis something which talks about how to dress up for your best friend's wedding. Well, both are relevant to you, but at different moment in time. So as a marketer, for me, I need to ensure that there is content for all segments of my customers, whether they are preparing themselves for an interview, whether they are preparing themselves to attend a party, whether they want to be cool all the time. I mean, whatever it is, for each and every micro segment, I have content. So customer is no longer this large segment, faceless segment of 18 to 34 years for me, but within them, there are micro segments. And with social media, with technology, with digital, I have so much more canvas to, like make content for them, and like target them specifically on different journeys, what they undertake on social. With this comes the complex part. Of course, like how do I ensure that the content is fresh all the time, is relevant all the time, like is something that is seasonal. So like if I talk about a wedding in summers, I cannot talk about the same looks in winters, and so on and so forth. So like content creation for us is an everyday thing. And now what has happened, with everybody armed with a mobile phone, everybody has become a content creator. And that applies to everyone. While we do the traditional way of content creation, which is, we have a studio in-house, we also have agency partners. We also work with publishers like PopXO or Filter Copy, who've done fabulous work for us. We happen to enjoy one of the highly shared like video which we did on Mother's Day on Facebook, which was a collaboration between us and Filter Copy. But I think everybody is a content creator now, more so, like people who actually enjoy influence over my customers are influencers who are of their age, the bloggers, the fashionistas, the like common person who on Instagram goes and says, hey, lifestyle collection for festive is really good. So I'm looking everywhere. Every time, a customer tweets with or like shares a post on Instagram with content saying that, hey, look at this picture, I'm wearing this is from lifestyle, this is good, that's content for me. And like, so therefore we're looking at all possibilities, and then we have these content buckets for different occasions, micro moments. So we marry all of this, and then like through our content central that we've created, there is a group of people who are constantly monitoring social for everything that's coming up, and we respond with the latest collection, the latest information. And with the help of advanced targeting options that are now available on social media, we present it to people when they are actually looking for information that we have to give them. So that is what we do in a nutshell.
Thanks so much, Shikha, for giving us a glimpse into the online retail world. And we've been talking here in the earlier sessions about how education also needs to be personalized to that extent for every student, because you guys are doing it, and everybody's accustomed to it, and they expect that kind of personalization. But of course, that just increases the amount of work for you and in creating more and more content. But it is relevant.
Yes. I think, like marketing is not a lazy person's game anymore. Honestly, it never was, but now it is more about thinking on your feet, because you have to be there where the customer is there. Because, even as an Indian company, I am aware, whether I'm in education or in fashion, I'm not only competing with the Indian players, I'm competing with the international players. So you have to be at the top of the game, and you have to be there where customer is, and you have to be there relevant to them when they want information from you. That is how you break the clutter.
Thanks a lot, Shikha. We're going to now move on to Vivek Jiyal. Vivek, you're the Director for Design and User Experience at Flipkart, and have spent the past 15 years in the retail industry, out of which 10 years have been in online alone. So I think the apt question for you is, since you've been catering to India as a market, and India is unique than other countries in its diversity, and it requires certain special attention when it comes to crafting user experiences. So in your experience, what are some of the challenges that come with delivering a user experience for Indian audiences at that scale?
Sorry, Guru, there's a lag, or there's some disturbance in the connection, I believe. I'm so sorry for that. But what I could understand is that you want to know what are the challenges in scaling up e-commerce. Is that what it is? Okay. So
yes.
So yeah, so it's actually a multi-dimensional question, because there are multiple challenges and from multiple directions, right? And there are logistical challenges. There are challenges that I'm facing right now, internet challenges, right? And of course cataloging challenges and so on and so forth. But let me focus on challenges that are relevant to this panel today, right? And one of the challenges that I see is language, for example, right? Am I audible, Guru? Sorry, am I audible? Yeah. Okay, so yeah, so if you look at the e-commerce market today, right? So we have around 100, close to 100 million, in fact, 110 million people who shop online today, right? And that market is going to go to around 300 million in the next 4 years, right? And that's going to be a rapid growth because this 100 million we have built over time, which is almost 12, 13 years, right? And can you imagine what is the population, what is the English-speaking population in India today, right? That's any guesses there?
It's in billions, I know that much.
so yeah, it's roughly around 100 and somewhere between 100 and 120, right? So what happens to people, you know, who those 120 million people, right? So that is what we need to solve for, right? Because so which means that we have to introduce a lot of the locales, you know, we have to get vernacular in place, and you know, and all of that should run better than what is running in English today, because you know there's more amount of, I would say, effort that we go to you know, really get them on board, right? Because this is going to be their first time using an e-commerce platform, right? So yeah, so language being one. Second one, I would say literacy, right? That's another challenge that I face, because you know we are definitely going to go to you know, pockets across India, you know, where literacy is a big problem, right? And there, you know, if I go to a Kirana store or if I go to any other shop, right, I can just see and I can buy and I can speak and I can buy that, right? But when it comes to browsing through an app, it becomes very difficult. You know, it becomes a problem. It becomes multi-fold, right? So how do we solve for that, right? And yeah, of course, a lot of people are working on you know, things like voice. For example, people are working on you know, machine learning and you know, AR, VR, and all of that, like to really you know, help and just talking about, right? Third problem that I see is around cultures. Again, this is a problem similar to language, but yeah, you know, slightly different there, because you know, it is more to do with the taxonomy or the or you know, the collection that we have. For example, you know, the fashion down south is very different from what you get in the north, right? But then you know, this is a common place, that there's a common hub. We just have one store. It's an online store, right? So for a place which is you know, for a physical store, it becomes easier. And not easier. That's not fair to them. But yeah, at least it becomes practical to actually you know, take those things and you know, take it there. But yeah, for e-commerce player, right, it becomes extremely important to personalize things and personalize to a level that you know, I can show different products in different pockets of India, right? So yeah, this is the third one, and fourth one, of course, which I think not just e-commerce. I think we really need to up the game, you know, across industries, which is accessibility, right? You know, so if people who are visually impaired, or you know, people who can't hear, right? So if they can access to e-commerce, right, and that's when voice, for example, comes into play, right? And yeah, so I hope that answered your question.
Thanks a lot. Language, I'm sure, is like a huge problem, especially with the number of languages that we have here. And I can understand what a nightmare it must be to ensure that, you know, you're personalizing it to that content, to that level. But then that is the need of the hour, and there's no, you know, escaping.
There are 100 you know, there are just 100 million people who speak English. Rest of you know, rest of India speaks some other language, right? So we have to cater. We have, you know, a number of people we need to cater to, right? It's just you know, I think it's close to
Thanks so much, Vivek, for sharing that.
Overall, e-commerce space.
Thank you, Vivek. Sorry, we're just having a little bit of a network issue here, but thanks for sharing your views on that, Vivek. Next, I'd like to move to Sumant Jayakrishnan. Sumant, you're a scenographer, a designer, an installation artist, a theater person, and you build in elements such as audio visuals, videos, calligraphy, lighting, performance, and whether it's, across theater or dance or film or even fashion. Since you're doing so many things, why do you think that, that artists today should diversify? And what are some of the pros and cons of pursuing a multidisciplinary skill? Hi, Sumant, are you there?
Can you hear me?
Yes. Yes, we can.
Yeah. No, thank you for the question. I don't think we have a choice to be other than multidisciplinary in this day and age. So I think as someone who's in a design education space, either as a teacher or as a student, that's a critical approach to take. And I'm going back to what Tulika said about collaboration, because you need to be aware of everything, and where you cannot pick up the skills because one can or cannot be a master of all trades, then you collaborate, And then picking up on what Shikha said, the other thing that is very critical and important is that it is really all about the narrative, whether it's craft, whether it's in the space of retail, whether it's in the space of an app. And the fact that we've all become storytellers because we have the technology in our hand and we're engaging with it all the time. I think, what is your story? What is your narrative? And how do you develop skills for that is going to be quite important in terms of an adaptability and an attitude, because that's what teaches you how to engage with the current world, which is changing so fast. It's changing fast in terms of how the politics, the social politics and economics work. It changes in terms of cultural evolution, because you're local and you're global. And as Indians, we have a huge, or at least the Indian subcontinent, we have a huge advantage, because you can, because of the kind of historicity that we come from, of being both local. Yeah, so you can be very international and global in your way of thinking because you're brought up like that. You can also go back and become very local about where you come from, what your language is, what your daily cultural routines are. It's a huge gift. So I think skills to learn to integrate that is what will allow all of this to connect. Whether it be craft, which is so artisanal, whether it be technology, which we all use. I mean, I can give you a bunch of examples about how this connecting of dots as a skill process is something that is important. If I'm working on a fashion show, I might go from something very, if I'm, a show with Tarun, for example, there was something which was mesh architecture, very detailed, very finite, yet very light, because we're talking sustainability, how do you work with other things? Or I'm talking about this very high-end wedding I worked on in Italy a couple of 3-4 years ago, where the entertainment team that I was collaborating and working with was based out of Milan. They usually do the opening and closing ceremonies for the Olympics. Now, how do you expand your bandwidth to be able to deal with that? Because they work with a whole range of technology, and it's exciting. And one can do that because that's the kind of experience one has. To say an installation in London for the Design Biennale, the London Design Biennale, where then I was collaborating with another friend, Hanif Qureshi, who also works on street art. But he was focusing on the aspect of text and hand-painted text from around the country in different colors. Because when you talk about design and a utopia in design, that can only happen when you look at design on the street in India. So, and then you adapt yourself to that space. Currently, I'm working on the interiors for a Good Earth store. Now that deals with so many aspects in the historicity of what they're working with. The skills they work with, the crafts they work with, and then how do you create a context for that engagement to be represented and sold to people. So I think that this process of how you learn to connect the dots, where you pull in people that you engage with, collaborate with, to do that, to tell the story. But I think more importantly, to clarify for yourself, how do you tell a story? And I'm being abstract here, metaphorical here. But that's a skill that all of us, as we get along with technology, struggle to engage with, because you have a story now, B, it'll keep changing fast. So then how do you adapt to that? So that communication aspect becomes important, so that it covers the gamut of all that we're doing. You know, I'm working on a bunch of craft projects. So I'm visiting people on site to understand how to engage with the artisanal nature of it, and yet use technology to make sure that the story is projected out there, so that it's branded correctly, so that people want to acknowledge that bit of story and context and content is something valuable, rare, like a piece of art that you can keep and reflect, because it also helps you reflect who you are with your history of your culture. So, I mean, there are all these different spaces which all lead to process, story, you know. And when I work with teams and when I hire teams, I look for 3 or 4 critical things. You know, I look for that excitement, that hunger, for the ability to learn, so that whoever the person is a bit like a sponge, to take in things to add to who you are. And also the interest in, oh, how do we tell this story? And it doesn't matter what the field is across the board. So I hope that's answered part of what you asked me.
Yes, it did, Suman. Thanks so much and for sharing your thoughts on that. I have a question now for all of you. Well, like all of you are creative in your own ways, and you're exercising creativity. There's this myth I've noticed, I've come across amongst many people who are not in the creative field, who tend to believe that creativity is something you're born with. It's this thing in the DNA that is sent from generations, and it's So what do you guys think? Do you think it's something that's gifted to you, or do you think it's something that you could acquire if you were to put some effort into it? This is open to all of you, so anyone could. Let's go with Sumant. Do you have a view on this?
Okay.
Yes, I think creativity is like any other space, which is a muscle that has to be exercised. And the more you use it, the larger it becomes, and the bigger the range and flexibility that is there. And it doesn't matter. I mean, we talk in paradigms of the left brain and the right brain, and that one is more creative and one is more, form follows, is more functional. And I've found that every person I've engaged with, if you find the right way in, you find the creative streak in them. So I feel it's entirely something that exists in everyone.
Okay. Dr. Gupta, you had some views on this?
Yes. I think Sumant has explained it beautifully. I would just like to add that, yes, it does exist. And as he said, if you don't practice it. So it's both, it's nature and nurture. It's there somewhere within you, but it has to be nurtured. You have to be given the right kind of outlet, and you need a kind of, you don't have to put students or people into boxes. You can, and people who are creative, they can come across any situation, anytime. So I think as a person in academics, or anybody who's training young people, or it's important for us to see that they are let loose in terms of creativity. They should be allowed to do what they want to do, because that's how creativity gets, that's how they're able to show their creativity. Otherwise, if you box them really tight, then it's very difficult for it to nurture. It is there, but then it's very deep inside somewhere. It doesn't come out.
Yeah, I think, what Sumant and Dr. Tulika has said, I completely agree with that. And in fact, I was just reading some researches the other day. So what was very interesting, they were talking about this creative cohesion that happens over a period of your life. Everybody is born creative, right? I mean, and then the world tells you that this is how, a particular thing should be. They train you to be something, walk a particular path in life. And then you start, narrowing your horizons. And that is where creativity stops. So creativity is something, whenever something new is formed, it could be a solution to a business, a solution to a business problem, or even something, as beautiful as a piece of work of art. But creativity is all that. Even whenever you are coming up with a solution to a difficult business problem, is creativity. So I feel that over a period of time, when you are trained, or you are told to think in a particular way, creativity stops. And therefore it is very important that beyond like whatever you are doing in education, if you're training to be an engineer, if you're training to be a teacher, it's also important to like not lose touch with creativity. Do something different. It could be even in form of an experience, travel, or take an arts course on the side, because it's very important to keep on exploring different things. It will keep you active, it will keep you fresh, it will keep you creative. And it is very important once you enter the business world, because whenever a problem is thrown at you, you won't have a single path find with which you are trained to do or solve problems, but you can look at it at different ways.
Thanks, Shikha. Vivek?
So yes, I think I agree with what Shikha and Dr. Tulika said, right? So I think we are all born creative, right? It's as in, I know you said it's a myth, but I don't believe that it's a myth. It's just that we have we actually have mix it eventually with design, right, or something very visual, which makes it a little tricky, right? And so if we keep creativity and visual or anything else, right, aside, right, apart, then I think it becomes pretty easy, right? So to me, I think it's about finding the right tool to express creativity, right? And it can be anything, as Shika said, that it can be engineering, right? So it's all about solving a problem, right? While we are solving a problem, there are there is experience that we come with, and there is a subconscious mind that is always working, right? So if you are able, some part of push that you will get while solving that problem is from your experience plus something else, and that something else is exactly what creativity is.
I have one addition to that, Guru. Because I was talking to a lawyer friend the other day, and one of the things we found in common was the fact that pretty much everything's been invented. There are processes and systems in place. There are art movements and design movements that happen. But I find now very often in the creative process, and that's where we concurred and agreed, is that you find that there's a series of cliches that you have. Now you weave those cliches together so it takes a particular form. And then you own that story or narrative. And that is what the creative space is, So it doesn't matter whether it's a business problem, exactly as Shikha said, or whether it's a lawyer dealing with a case, or me dealing with a design problem where I have to come up with a solution, or an artist who's dangling internally with a series of things that he has to put a story together to express a point of view.
Excellent. Thank you so much, Suman. I think all of you touched upon a very important point here about how creativity generally is associated only with arts and design. But it's what kind of problem you're solving in the future. You could always apply some form of creativity, to it and find some solution. We only have 10 minutes left, panelists. So I just want one last question to all of you. What would be so this is for all of you. What would be your top 2 amends if you were appointed as a dean or director of an HED? And for Dr. Gupta, what would be your top 2 asks from HEDs if you were a chief designer of a corporation hiring talent? So we'll have both ways. Can we start with Dr. Gupta, please?
Okay, I'll go with that. So I think the first thing that I would look for is sincerity. And the second thing for me would be creativity, and the ability to learn. And here I'll give a very small example. Just during these COVID times, because the artisans were not able to sell their products, and there was a lot of hue and cry and what to do because exhibitions were not happening anymore. So people came together just on their own, and they called it Creative Dignity. Now there's a website of Creative Dignity where at least 100 of our students went. I mean, it's sort of like we employed them to work. None of them knew e-commerce. They were students. They were just learning. But They taught the artisans how to click pictures, how to create stories, the stories that we've been talking about, and how to put it together to put it on a platform to be able to sell that. So I think it's an amazing thing that can happen if there is sincerity and creativity within you. So I think these two things are very, very important. Then you can do whatever you want to do. Yeah, so that's it. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Gupta. Sumant, how about you?
I suppose what I'd look for as I don't know if it's an amend, it's a continuity of things that have been worked with in the past. To date, one of my, when I think back, one of my special experiences was, and that approach, because of that experience, continues to today, was when in my first year, I was then in my foundation year, for a month, we all stayed in a village and we had to engage completely with living how they did. This was in Gujarat. And that approach of being able to span, from different economic structures, from the bottom to the top, to dealing with people who are, industrial heads, to my carpenter or my tailor, that ability to engage with people across the board. That's such an important skill, because you have to engage, understand, and become a conduit to be able to make that process of any consequence, So I think that bit of training is something that you look at consciously. So it's not just about little boxes that you say, you put a tick and say, I've learned this, I've learned that. It's also about people engagement and management, because that's what you have to do across the board. And it doesn't matter which part of the world I'm in now, or whether I'm in India, whether I'm, dealing with anyone across the board. I go with that inherent understanding that I'm going to listen, and that is a skill I would really look at. And also that in that process of time, the value to be given to being a well-rounded person, so that you don't fall into the cliche, and it happens in design education or art institutes, that you start boxing yourself in as a student to say, this is what I need to be, and this is what is artistic, and that is not. And, it's making all this ambiguous. I think that's important.
And you are a quintessential example of how, not to box yourself in one single skill or craft, right?
Well, it's constant work in progress, because, one's attempt is to be as elastic as you can possibly be, as fluid, without losing yourself. You keep a core of you intact, but then how do you stay that way so you can flow and fit in? You have to be a little bit like the magic smoke. You fit in anywhere, anytime.
Thanks a lot, Sumant, for sharing your thoughts on that. Vivek, over to you.
I'm sorry, I dropped off because of I'm sorry for the patchy network. Could you please repeat that question again, and I'll...
Yeah, sure, no worries. So the question was, what are the top 2 amends would you make if you were the dean or a director of a HED?
Oh, wow, that's a good question. Yeah, so I think the first thing that I would do is just 2, right? So, yeah, the first thing that I'll do is that I would start rating students not on the final end product, but on the process, right? Because I see a lot of shortcuts that especially when people just get onboarded, right? I see a lot of people taking those shortcuts to eventually find the final project, final outcome. And thanks to the internet, we have everything available. Any answer I can Google. Okay, I need to design an e-commerce app, and Google will show me 100 different ideas, and that kills it completely, right? So to be original and to be really creative, or process is something that any institute should rate the students on. Yeah, that's part 1. Second one, I would say, if these internships that happen, right, if they can happen quite more often, like if they can happen every 6 months, right? And from the beginning of the semester, not just towards the end, because usually in India, in all colleges, right, it happens during the last year, right? But it honestly, it's just like a tick box, right? So it doesn't help really, right? So if we can have that at each point in time during the education, like a real practical experience about whatever we are trying to learn, that will make a lot of difference. Is what I feel.
Thanks a lot, Vivek, and thanks everybody. We've got the right audience in the room to be hearing your thoughts and maybe acting upon this. We have a question from the audience, but Supreet, do we have time to take that question?
Yeah, a minute or two, please. Yeah.
Okay, so we have a question from the audience that came about. At what stage students should start careers in design? This is for all of you, so anyone could jump in.
School.
Yeah,
Okay.
I think there is no particular stage as such. As early as possible, they can start.
As early as possible and as late as possible.
As late as possible. Agreed. Yeah.
Design after you retire, so that's absolutely fine.
You have to have the mindset, to be pretty honest. And like in fact, Sumant interestingly was just mentioning about his experience, right? When he was sent for his first design project and he lived in a village. So I think, like it's a bend of mind. So whenever you feel that design is your calling, it can happen anytime, late in life, early in life, but just be open to it. Be open to experiences, and academics should provide opportunity to give exposure to the students to design and to creative thinking. That is very important.
I think it's important. It's there right from the beginning in schools, so that it's given a value. It's given an empathy. It doesn't matter whether you choose design as a profession or not. The very fact that you're empathetic to it means that it becomes part of your way of life. It's like the language you speak. So it's not made out into some esoteric other that you have to go and aspire to. It's part of who you are. If you choose it, great. If you don't, it's also fine.
Excellent. So I think that's about all that we have time for. So thank you so much, everybody, all of you, Dr. Gupta, Shikha, Vivek, and Sumant, for sharing your thoughts and having this exciting discussion.
Thank you for having us.
Thank you.
Thank you for having us.
It was a good discussion. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, panel. That concludes the panel on creativity, design, and architecture. Needless to say, creativity is no longer an option. It's our future, and technology is a super express highway to aid that. With that, we move on to the next section. Before we go into the next, event for the evening, which is about the hot technology, which is OTT, over-the-top technologies, and what do you do from a content creation standpoint? What are the careers that are available in this emerging field, really fast emerging field? We have an eminent speaker from Netflix, Vijay Venkatraman, director post-production. But before that, let me take a quick 5-minute stretch break for all of you. And we'll be right back in 5 minutes. It's 15:25 now, 3:25. We'll be back by 3:30 p.m. Right? Stay tuned. Vijay.
The way we see it, creativity lives not only in the idea, but also in the ways you find to express that idea. Because a good idea deserves to be shared with the world in whichever media will make the most impact. Whether it's a video, a website, posters, flyers, t-shirts, an app, a social media campaign. Whatever it takes to prove your point, get people on board, get people to say, let's make it. Get your foot in the door. We believe that when students learn to express themselves in any medium, they'll find their voice. They'll find new ways to make an impact in school and beyond. They'll be the ones with the answers for, how do we make this work better? How do we make it stronger? How do we make it simpler? The students of today are the ones with the new ideas for whatever challenges come next. So let's give them a chance to create a better world. The way we see it, creativity lives not only in the idea, but also in the ways you find to express that idea. Because a good idea deserves to be shared with the world in whichever media will make the most impact. Whether it's a video, a website, posters, flyers, t-shirts, an app, a social media campaign. Whatever it takes to prove your point, get people on board, get people to say, let's make it. Get your foot in the door. We believe that when students learn to express themselves in any medium, they'll find their voice. They'll find new ways to make an impact in school and beyond. They'll be the ones with the answers for, how do we make this work better? How do we make it stronger? How do we make it simpler? The students of today are the ones with the new ideas for whatever challenges come next. So let's give them a chance to create a better world. The way we see it, creativity lives not only in the idea, but also in the ways you find to express that idea. Because a good idea deserves to be shared with the world in whichever media will make the most impact. Whether it's a video, a website, posters, flyers, t-shirts, an app, a social media campaign. Whatever it takes to prove your point, get people on board, get people to say, let's make it. Get your foot in the door. We believe that when students learn to express themselves in any medium, they'll find their voice. They'll find new ways to make an impact in school and beyond. They'll be the ones with the answers for, how do we make this work better? How do we make it stronger? How do we make it simpler? The students of today are the ones with the new ideas for whatever challenges come next. So let's give them a chance to create a better world. The way we see it, creativity lives not only in the idea, but also in the ways you find to express that idea. Because a good idea deserves to be shared with the world in whichever media will make the most impact. Whether it's a video, a website, posters, flyers, t-shirts, an app, a social media campaign. Whatever it takes to prove your point, get people on board, get people to say, let's make it. Get your foot in the door. We believe that when students learn to express themselves in any medium, they'll find their voice. They'll find new ways to make an impact in school and beyond. They'll be the ones with the answers for, how do we make this work better? How do we make it stronger? How do we make it simpler? The students of today are the ones with the new ideas for whatever challenges come next. So let's give them a chance to create a better world. The way we see it, creativity.
And welcome back to the second session of Higher Education track at Adobe Education Leadership Summit. We are next on to the track of looking at how do we address specific needs of OTT technologies, over-the-top technologies. We have an eminent speaker with us, Vijay Venkatramanan, Director of Post-Production Netflix. He comes in with a vast experience across multinational corporations, delivering cutting-edge content and pre- and post-production work. And he's going to share his ideas, thoughts, views, opportunities, and how you as an educational leader could establish your foothold in the new technologies that are emerging in these screen-based systems. So without much ado, let me welcome Vijay Venkatramanan. Vijay, over to you, please.
Hi, thank you. Thanks for having me. Give me a second while I just present my screen. All right, there we are. Well, good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you very much for having me here. I hope you're all well and staying safe. My name is Vijay Venkatramanan. I am the director of post-production for Netflix India. And today I'll be giving you a very broad, high-level view of how the entertainment industry in India is evolving, how our experience has been with the talent pool here as a studio operating here in India, and the impact of the education sector, can have in how we progress. I'm going to start by calling attention to this Paul Romer quote: "Everybody wants progress, nobody wants change." I won't dwell on it too much right now. We will come back to it a little later. But I would like you to keep this in mind over the next 10 minutes or so, because we're going to talk a lot about change. The entertainment industry in India is changing significantly. That change obviously has been accelerated by the entry of streaming services, or OTT platforms, as the more commonly known in our country. These services are producing a wide variety of content. As a result, though, it's not just the content that is changing, but also what goes into making that content. Let's talk about our favorite type of content: movies. We all love watching movies, right? In the old days, and when I say old days, I don't mean very, very old. I'm talking about, let's say, 20, 30 years ago. Movies were independently produced. They would often start with a director or a producer or a writer with a script. And then the rest of the team would then get hired, and then the movie would get eventually made. Today, movies are not independently produced as much, right? Because now there's a slightly different player in the business, and that player is the studio. Now, when I say studio, I'm not really talking about, a physical studio with a large backlot and all that jazz necessarily. A studio is a corporate where you have a whole bunch of entertainment executives, who strategize, who finance, who manage, and distribute the content that these producers make, and eventually get it to the end user. So Netflix, Amazon, Disney, Warner Brothers, Sony, HBO, you name it, all different examples of studios. Studio executives are largely focused around bringing these productions together, putting these projects together, scaling those operations, and managing multiple productions simultaneously. They deal with things like project development and the entire business side of entertainment. One of the things that we often find with youngsters today who aspire to work in the entertainment industry is they tend to gravitate towards the left side of your screen right there, into those roles. Most people come in harboring dreams of becoming a director. Some of them do. And the others kind of find their way into the other disciplines of entertainment production. But most are not really aware that there are careers that are, there are careers and opportunities available beyond just the production side of it, and even into the studio space. Today, I would say the entertainment industry has evolved to a point where making the actual entertainment is just 50% of the job. The remaining 50% actually happens at the studio end, because it's become so complicated, challenging, and exciting in how this content actually reaches the consumers. That change, let's talk about that change a little bit. Until, a few years ago, we were still watching content together, largely community viewing, right? With friends and family, we would go to the movies to watch, we go to the theaters to watch movies over there. which I hope we can get back to doing very soon. Or we were sitting in our living rooms watching, TV again with friends, with family. Today, those viewing habits have changed a little bit because now each person consumes content as per their taste, as per their convenience, and in private. So whether it's movies or series or whatever it is, sports and whatever it is people are watching, increasingly we find across the world, people are consuming this content on mobile phones and laptops and tablets and so on. And what are they watching over here? Episodic series are the rage today. Across platforms, episodic series account for higher viewing hours. The production value of some of these episodic series are even higher than what you would see in big feature films. Some of these budgets are as high, if not higher, in some cases as well. So this shift that we're seeing, in the entertainment field towards episodic series has also created a need for players like us, to tweak the core skill sets of entertainment professionals, right? That are working on producing this content. I'll give you a quick example. Take feature films, right? Typically, and I'm really generalizing here. A feature film, this gets made in a certain way where you look at it, you look at turning a feature film around over a period of a year. You'll typically have a director, one writer, shoot with one unit. You have an editor in an edit suite, a composer, a couple of VFX vendors and post-production vendors, and so on. In an episodic series, what you're really looking at is producing 6, 8, or 10 of these across a season in the same amount of time. And if you're producing a series for Netflix, at a higher technical spec, at a higher quality than feature films. So now the game changes a little bit, right? When you have to turn around higher volume, higher quality, same amount of time. You can't really pull off episodic series in the same way you look at feature films. So you have to rethink that approach. And often we find newer positions coming into the industry as a result of this. So now you have a showrunner. We often work with 2 to 3 directors. You might have multiple writers, working in our writing room. You might be shooting with more than one unit. Sacred Game season 1 and 2, fine examples of this, where you had 2 parallel stories. The past story, which was Ganesh Gaitonde's story, and then present day, which was Sartaj Singh's. Moving in parallel. They were shot by 2 different directors with 2 entirely different units, almost functioning like 2 separate productions, and then brought together in post-production later on. So when you're producing a series of that scale and that complexity, you also tend to employ more people on the team. And now recently, as a result of the COVID crisis, and as we look to get productions back up and running, we're also seeing the inclusion of a new function as part of all of this, which is the health and safety management team. Let's talk a little bit more about these key differences, right? Because this is really important in how the future generation is skilled to be able to meet the requirements of the entertainment industry. Between episodic series and feature films, there's a huge difference in the kind of creative approach that you're looking at. So the narrative structures differ. Most writers are trained in writing for feature films. So you either write in a 3-act structure. In India, because we have intermissions, we tend to write either in a 4-act structure, 6-act structure. But then writing for episodic series is a completely different ball game, because you have to think about narrative structures within an episode. You have to think about narrative structures over the course of a season. You need an episodic hook that has people excited about jumping to the next episode. You need a season hook that gets them excited about coming back for the next season. You also have to rethink the visual approach, because when you're making movies to be exhibited in a theater, you have a captive audience. People have paid for your ticket. You already have their attention. With episodic series, especially with everybody, so many people watching them off personal devices, you are competing against external factors for your audience's attention every 5 seconds. So, people might be watching sacred games on their phone on their way back from work on the local train while standing. Somebody might be watching a show while cooking. So you're constantly dealing with these kind of situations. So your visual approach has to also change in order to hook and hold on to your audience's attention. We also find that obviously, as I mentioned, with the crews getting larger and getting restructured, the production and post approaches and how these shows actually get produced, there's a huge shift in that on that front as well, where these shows require extensive planning. So my function is post production. The title may imply that these are all tasks that have to be done after production is complete, but my teams start working while the scripts are being written, and they're already planning out resources and schedules and budgets and workflow way back, way as early as the writing stage itself. And then, of course, there are the technical specifications. Like I said, at Netflix, we're delivering our content in 4K Dolby Vision HDR and Dolby Atmos immersive audio. And this, is a huge jump. Was a huge jump for the industry, and can also challenge your timelines and budgets. All these years, we made Indian films and shows for Indians. Our movies traveled abroad, but primarily played to diaspora audiences. Now, however, with the platforms like Netflix, your content is accessible in 190 countries across the globe at the same time. So we're no longer making in India just for India. We're making in India for the world. Just open your Netflix and take a look. You will find shows like Sacred Games right next to global hits like Stranger Things and House of Cards and Narcos and The Crown. Our original films are right up there with some of the biggest films in the world. So entertainment and its reach has evolved. The business has progressed, but are we keeping up? So coming back to this quote, right?
अच्छी नहीं फोटो
Sorry?
अच्छी नहीं फोटो
All right, I'm going to ignore that. I'll come back to this quote. Now, try and read this quote, keeping in mind everything that I've told you so far. For us to progress and compete at a global level, a few things have to change. And you, as the education sector, have a huge part to play in that change. And you can do that by reflecting these industry shifts in your academic curriculum, in your academic approach, and how you train our future entertainment professionals. How can you do that? First, help your students understand these changes. We find often that when we hire, that entertainment education in India is still kind of stuck in the older feature film model. Secondly, career guidance on the various roles that can be pursued. That everybody does not need to become a director, and there are far more career opportunities that exist in the entertainment industry. Thirdly, shifting focus from tools onto best practices. Right, I'll go into this a little deeper in the next slide. Understand that in the old days, the tools and the technology was very expensive. You could have pieces of equipment that would cost crores, and this kind of equipment and the tools that you needed to make and create entertainment were only available, were only affordable for facilities and educational institutions. So you either had to enroll in one of these or be an apprentice at a facility to even be able to look at one of these tools, let alone train on them. Today, however, that's changed because tools are easily accessible. Within 60 seconds, you can download most of the tools that we need for making movies. They have free trials that are available. And then there's this thing
अपनी
called
email ID दे देना
YouTube, YouTube University, as I
भाई
like to call it.
इनकी मेल आईडी ले लो उसको मेल कर दे डायरेक्टली
Apologies, I'm seeing getting some interference here.
मेन ऑडिटोरियम वाली क्रिएट की होगी ना आपने
Mansi, can you kindly mute yourself, please?
आईडी बोल भाई
All right.
Sorry, you're having a.
Should I continue?
Yeah, please continue, Vijay.
All right. So, your tools today are, as I was saying, are easily accessible, and there's a tutorial for pretty much everything that is everything you need on YouTube. So people don't necessarily need to enroll at an educational institution just to learn how to operate tools. I want to think about educating kind of like the screwdriver. This particular screwdriver that you're looking at on screen can open one type of screw, that Phillips head over there. What I'm talking about is, having that screwdriver really represent those best practices and foundations. And when the best practices and foundations are strong, then the head doesn't really matter. Think about those different screw heads, like the different technology, the tools, the content type that's constantly changing. So if your best practices and foundations are strong, it's very easy to be able to adapt to the ever-changing nature of the entertainment industry, right? Uh, Quick kind of overview of the current scenario. Over the last 2 years that I've been working at Netflix, we've had a need to work with many of our production partners, working professionals, to equip them with additional skills to meet our needs for producing content at scale, quality, and speed. We began with collaborating with Focal from Sweden to train line producers and first ADs in early 2019 to effectively schedule for episodic series. We partnered with the Amsterdam Post Lab in October 2019 to run a 4-day intense post-production workshop for post supervisors and producers. We have an assistant editor training program that's in the works, along with a digital imaging technician training program as well. We find that all of these gaps that currently exist are really crucial to help us scale, to help us work smarter, and to help us work more efficiently. Now, it would be really great, and we would be extremely appreciative if a lot of these gaps in what we find, that this upskilling that Netflix has to do is addressed already at the college level. And we are working with a few educational institutions, and just engaging in conversations around how we can bring about that change. Along with, I've spoken a lot about these kind of job skills, but is that enough in today's competitive global industry to have just that? So I just want to take a moment to talk about professional and interpersonal skills as well. As someone responsible for hiring and leading a team, I'm constantly evaluating candidates, right? If not for my team, I'm interviewing candidates for other people's teams as well, cross-functional teams and so on. And I find that in highly specialized education sectors like entertainment education, this part of the training is often overlooked. I'm talking about skills such as how to pursue employment in a professional manner. How do you reach out to senior professionals to ask for a job? How do you prepare yourselves better for an interview? Written communication skills. How do you structure an email, write a cover letter, format a resume? Trust me, even today I'm receiving applications from very, very experienced candidates that resumes running 6 pages long, with their passport numbers on it and information, their father's details and things like that. And I think there is some assistance required on that front, that educational institutions can really provide. Also, in terms of analytical skills, remember what I talked about, concepts and having a strong foundation as opposed to simply learning how to use a tool. And that's what will enable your students to really question what they're doing, encourage them to innovate and think outside the box instead of always following a set process. Again, extremely crucial in an industry where the tools and technology are constantly changing. I will conclude by giving a personal example of mine. I graduated from the University of Southern California School of Cinematic Arts in 2004. And, great school, often ranked amongst the top 3 schools in the world for studying filmmaking. A couple of years after I graduated, the industry globally shifted from film to digital cinema. All the tools that I learned as part of my education started becoming obsolete. Most of them started becoming obsolete. A lot of that technology started becoming obsolete. And I was able to adapt simply because of the emphasis that was placed on best practices and on theory and on those concepts. Additionally, what I took away most from that education was actually not the filmmaking that I learned, but these professional skills. In some of the toughest years of my life, of my career, often these professional skills have helped me kind of just keep my head a little above my peers. We had, I still remember we had a career guidance center where there would be people who would help us understand how studios worked. There would be people who would help us literally sit down with us and help us, give us notes on the cover letters that we were drafting when we were applying for internships and things like that, helping us format resumes and so on. So that those skills continue to remain with me and continue to help me the most. And I hope that the future generation and the talent pool that we continue to tap into here in India also can enjoy that support from the education sector moving forward. And with that, I'm happy to take any questions if you have.
Thank you so much, Vijay. It was an amazing and a resourceful, bunch of pointers that you brought out, very meaningful to the current generation. I see a couple of questions from the audience here. With the line between technology and film, blurring, largely, are these careers just confined to the film as a fraternity from a student's and career standpoint, from a courseware standpoint, or is it that the borders are thinning? Can students from computer science and technology background look at careers in film? What does it take, and what are the stuff that universities should do to get acquainted to these kind of skillings and job opportunities? Isn't it?
Sure. Look, I think there's always been history of people from various different backgrounds, coming into the entertainment field. I don't think, there are skills in the entertainment field that obviously you have to learn, but it's important to learn about the industry first and figure out what it is that you want to do. What's happened now is there's an increasing emphasis placed on specialists in the entertainment industry, and technology has become an integral part of that, right? So I find and even if, like I said, there are two sides to it. There's the production aspect of it, of the entertainment industry, and now there's a studio aspect of it. Look at Netflix. We've got, half of our company which makes original content and entertainment executives. But the other half of our company, and I'm guessing it's half, don't hold me to that number, but pretty much, this is, the big chunk of our company is made up of engineers, because we've got a cutting edge platform, that goes out to 190 countries, that delivers picture content in quality that you won't get anywhere else, and a user interface that is so friendly and that's constantly evolving and getting better. And to make all that happen and keep that going, that's 50% of the business, and that's run by people who are not from the entertainment industry. And I work with a lot of engineers on a daily basis. I work with project managers. So that being part of the entertainment industry doesn't necessarily only mean that you're going to be making content. Delivering that content is now a crucial part of the entertainment business.
Get it. In the interest of time, I'll just pick one of the most interesting questions that's come in. Entrepreneurship and OTT platforms. What's the future in India? What are your top 2 or top 3 takes on this specific opportunities? People feel that it's more of employability opportunities, but there is also a possibility of entrepreneurship. Can we have a Netflix equivalent in India, or are there other opportunities which are beyond the realm of just having a bunch of video libraries and then people can look at it from on-demand standpoint? What are the other avenues that one could look at?
Yeah, I mean, look, it's got to be something disruptive, right? That's what Netflix was. At an era where people were renting DVDs from stores, Netflix first disrupted that market by saying, we're going to send you DVDs by mail, and you don't need to go to the video stores and play and pay late fees and things like that.
Yeah.
And then they disrupted it again by saying, all right, you don't need DVDs anymore. We'll just pipe this content right into your computers. And then the next step was, we'll pipe it right into your TVs through your internet connection. So definitely, the entertainment industry, like I said, constantly keeps changing. So there's huge room for entrepreneurship there, where again, it's about innovation and disrupting what exists today.
Thank you so much, Vijay. It was absolutely a pleasure to have you on this platform.
A pleasure.
And I'm sure you've added a lot of resources and meaningful thoughts to institution and education leaders on OTT and the next generation platforms, careers and opportunities in this space. Thank you so much, Vijay.
My pleasure. See you. Thanks for having me. Bye.
Thank you. So we move on to the next, session, which is an interesting topic of discussion on user interface and user experience, which in the current realm of situation that we are in, 40% of the jobs are going to be completely online in the next coming year. Given the current situation, how and what are the possibilities? How do we deal with the changing scenarios? Is user interface, user experiences, and online across desktop web, mobile web, becoming a need of the hour, just like how we have languages? So joining with me are two eminent speakers who are experts in their rights in the user interface and user experience. With me is Mr. Aman Mittal, Additional Director of Lovely Professional University. Welcome to the Adobe Education Leaders Summit, Aman. We also have Ganesh Gaikwad. Ganesh Gaikwad is an eminent leader in the digital practice. He currently is part of Tata Consultancy Services. He's GM of digital practice at Tata Consultancy Services. Thank you so much for joining, Ganesh. Aman, welcome to Adobe Education Leaders Summit.
Hello.
Yeah. Yeah. Over the next few minutes, I'd like to have a round of discussion with you on what's the next generation of UI UX professionals look like. Take us through what does this role entail? What is the growing importance of UI UX as a profession in 2021 with a new normal for all industries, not just IT, ITs, or e-commerce as a space? Let's start with you, Ganesh, and then I'll take a stab at it from Aman's viewpoint as well.
Okay, thanks. I hope I'm audible.
Yes, you are, Ganesh. Please.
Okay, thank you. So, if you look at my company within TCS or even outside in India or in abroad, we find that design is finding a room. Designers have been outside the decade. Only the star designers could be, we are able to make some influence. That said, in last few years, maybe about 5 to 7 years, there are different studies. Take Forrester, Gartner, those analysts who have published dominant analysis on how customer experience and the end user experience in turn is becoming important. It's very easy. The reports are there on the internet from right 2016, and they have even studied the companies who in the same segment, for example, AT&T and Comcast, or Southwest Airlines and United Airlines. People who had an explicit strategy on design and user and customer experience, how they have grown, and companies which didn't have. So figures are stunning, number one. Secondly, the economy is more and more access or experience economy. When you say experience economy, it definitely calls for great user experience and end-to-end user experience. Some people call it service experience. And who else but designers can drive that? And the third dimension that is boosting this is obviously the new normal of the COVID situation, where their education sector.
We seem to be having a connectivity issue with Ganesh. While I get him back on, Aman, would you like to comment on what does it look like for you on the UI UX professionals growing need in a large university of your category, and then you're looking at a multi-country approach in terms of admissions, outreach, and collaborations as well. Could you please unmute yourself, Aman, your volume?
Can you hear me now?
Yes, please.
So I think that what the Ganesh was referring to is astonishing, that the figures that he was about to quote about the various upswings in the numbers of the revenues just because of the great user interface and user experience. So I would say that now, it was always important to give a great user experience to a customer. But I think now most of the services are moving online. And when you have that most of the services are moving online, then you have to have a great, instead of a great showroom, you need to have a great app or a great website. And for that, as you have a great showroom, you have a great lighting, you have a great facade, you have a great door, you have a lot of things that attract a customer to come in and say that, oh, I'm having a good experience. Similarly, now the website and app has to think like that they're creating a showroom or a place where the student, where the person is going to get an experience. So I think the role of user experience is phenomenal. User experience is phenomenal. Interface is phenomenal. We have seen with the iPhone or our iPod. That was the greatest example of design of simple user interface and user experience that has created a huge product, and nobody's able to beat it. When the iPod came, so many small devices came up with some similar or a better hardware and stuff like that, but they could not succeed. Simple reason, because of the not great user experience and interface. So I think if a simple question is, does user interface and experience matters in today's world? It mattered before as well. It matters more now because more and more services are going online. And I think the upswing in the career opportunities and user interface and user experience was already great, and it's going to grow really exponentially high. And as lovely professional university, we are a multidisciplinary university with arts, with engineering, with management, and design school as well. And I see now more and more students, faculties collaborating with each other to create that better user experience for a lot of our companies who come and recruit our students.
That's great, Aman. Nice to hear that. Moving on to one of the hot topics in boardrooms today. It's centered largely around customer centricity, personalized engagement, data-based content that is being pushed in a hyper-personal world. What does it mean to mega enterprises? What's the kind of impact that we are looking at? And do you see the relevance coming in of a UI UX designer in a boardroom play when it comes to corporate strategy at large? You can start it at Ganesh, and then Aman could follow through on that. Same question.
Yeah. So traditionally, designers were considered people who treat the user interface, and a lot of designers used to hate that job because they said, "What is the point in applying a lipstick on a bulldog?" So designers were, kind of perceived as people working on the interface layer, presentation layer of your product or service. Now, designers have established themselves as idea generation people and not just people who make things look good. So, use cases, the kind of business problems we are solving are no more any one particular specializations, forte. Anybody can contribute to idea, but designers are in a unique position to shape that idea professionally, considering the context of the use, considering the persona and profiles of the users. So designers are creating, in fact, ideas, and a lot of ideas that have been created by designers. It's entirely company started by designers with a simple, site which was so compelling that it was actually threatening a billionaire chains in the US, and the phenomenon goes on and on. So designers definitely have a driving seat, I think, today.
Great. That's very interesting to understand. Aman, your thoughts on this?
So, Supreet, I will not differ too much with Ganesh. And actually, there are, as I said before as well, that now the whole user experience is coming online. More and more services are going online. So, thus it becomes more important for somebody who understands the user experience, which could be a UI or UX expert, to be on the board and decide upon that how my product should look like. So, I think most of the boardroom meeting on the product designing or service delivery is bringing that UI UX expert, which people used to, as Ganesh has mentioned, that it just used to be on one layer and that's it. But now he or she is coming in the boardroom and saying, no, our product feel and look should be like this. I mean, Steve Jobs is a great example of that. You know, when Bill Gates has mentioned that, what's the difference between Elon Musk and Steve Jobs? He said Steve Jobs is a great designer and a marketer. I mean, so we have a great designer who understands design so well, who spearheaded something and made something like Apple as big as Apple. So I think the role of a UX designer is going to go better only or not only going to the boardroom, but leading the boardroom could be one of the scenario in the future.
Right.
Supreet, can I just add to your point of what are the topics in boardroom? So if you look at it, earlier the boardroom people or the business people would give you a problem to solve. And most of the design, engineering, and all the implementation people would, take that brief as given. Today, that's not the case. So any problem, for example, if you take user experience problem designers solve, so they were given the business use case. Today, that's not the case. What designers are doing is they are predicting what would be the requirement of the user in future. For example, if you are a bank customer, if you have got the increment, if your salary is increased, and bank knows of course that, and your age is say 35, and you just got married, and you have an add-on card, then you are expecting a baby or you are buying a flat. So that is a predictive need that designers are busy along with other people predicting the customer's need in advance and then shaping the interface, prioritizing the information and content that goes to the user. So apps are not just transactional now. Apps are like friends.
Okay.
Friends are not transactional. So that kind of trends are coming. And second trend is about leveraging ecosystem. Nobody today is standing solo and succeeding in the market. So how do you leverage the ecosystem and what one product or service, how it connects with entire other things that present in the life of the end user? And who is the better person that designer here to understand it? So I think designers have great opportunity, and current context is both. It is extremely challenging and it is extremely rewarding as well at the same time.
Get it. Now this brings me to a very interesting topic of we know that clearly UI UX is the in thing, And designing for every channel, desktop, web, mobile, web, or any screen is a dire necessity. And industry is looking for designers who do holistic design and successfully translating them to branding elements, to physical, digital, interactive mediums. The bigger question and the million-dollar question is obviously, how do we get our students interested to think creatively? How do we skill them? How do you ensure that the budding professionals think outside the box and meet the skyrocketing demand, given the fact that half of the world is moving to the online space, and most of the jobs are getting into that space? And we could start with you, Ganesh, and then we could have Aman chip in from the university or skilling angle as well.
Okay, so as I understand, how do we make and impart that creative thinking in the new breed of designers? So
Absolutely.
I would personally say that the design institutes or institute where design is taught as one of the major subjects are doing a fantastic job. All across the education institutes are opening up. They are not rigid like they were 15 years ago. So they are doing a good job for students to enable them to ask questions, because the solution and creative thought will flourish if people are able to ask questions and not just order takers. So that culture is paramount in creating a team which will be sparklingly creative. So that half part of it institutes do contribute to that. In the professional field, there are hierarchies, there are time pressure, things like that. But if to an organization where this culture is, I think would start becoming more creative. I think there is a lot of theory exists around the creative thinking, lateral thinking, all that is there. But in real life, there are constraints of time, and more often than not, these constraints of time actually contribute to a person being more creative rather than less creative.
Get it. So Aman, over to you. Your thoughts?
I would say, like in Lovely Professional University in LPU, we have a very nice design school. And the ethos of that design school is that, whatever Ganesh has mentioned, that it's more of a, let the student ask them just to listen. That's there across the university. But with respect to the design school, one very important thing which we have done is that allowing students to take on the projects, freelancing projects while they're studying in the university. It's almost made as a mandate that if you have after your third semester, you should start taking the freelancing projects. And our faculty works with the students to complete that freelancing project. What Ganesh has mentioned that student life is very different from the professional life. You do while you're doing a project, you don't have a pressure of a deadline and blah blah stuff. But I think there's a lot of pressure, Ganesh, now on the students of the assignments we have to submit online. But I think what we have done very differently is that allowing students to take freelancing project as well, so that students really get to see the customer requirements while they are in the university or as a student. So when they get a feedback that, oh, we didn't like the color, we didn't like the font, this is not working out. We have done a test cases with some 200 of our customer, and this is the feedback they're coming up. So I think this is a real life scenario which at least the design students need much more than anybody else. And now we have 3 different tracks. We have BTech computer science students who can take UI UX, or a B design students, or even the multimedia students. So I think and a lot of collaboration happening between the management students, bringing the kind of idea, the computer science students creating that platform, and the UI UX expert creating that interface. This is also very important, that we allow students to collaborate and then just not work, okay, this is the product statement, work on it. Let's say be synergy between different disciplines. That also makes a designer much more enriched when he or she graduates from the school.
That's nice to hear, Aman. one of the things that I keep hearing from industry hiring managers is that UI UX technologies give students a competitive edge in the job market. Needless to say, we have discussed sufficient and more on these topics. But what is more startling is the fact that the lack of practicability and application aspect of it. So how do you get them started without being intimidated with technological challenges, whether they're in computer science background or a design or a graphics or a communications discipline? What are your thoughts? I mean, how do you think you could help them cross this bridge?
See, I think it is all about, I mean, we should have a great faculty and a mentor. I mean, in the end, whatever you're studying, you need to have that great mentor who's able to teach you the fundamentals very right. I mean, and I always say when people say, I want to be a engineer or an IT guy or a UI UX expert, I always say that, what are you passionate about? What do you really want to see your career forward? So I think ensuring that you have the right people who want to build a career in this area, I mean, they're passionate about whatever they're studying, and then you have a right faculty and the system who handholds them at least in the first 2 semesters very, very closely. And then I think it's the passion that will drive them, and that's that kick of achieving something or getting something done that drives them. But I think first 2 semesters are important, and I think there the faculty mentor are going to play a very important role. And needless to say that you have to provide them with the best of the training and have people like Ganesh talking to them. I mean, it's very important that they hear with the industry people and they get to know that, okay, what the industry requirements are, where the industry is going forward.
So, Ganesh, given the fact that we've clearly covered the need and what are the trends in the UI UX technologies, what are your top 3 suggestions, to higher education institutions in the quest for creating the best-in-class UI UX? You already told me that they're doing a good job. What are the top 3 things that you think that they can push the envelope to the next level?
So I apologize if my network is not ideal. The key thing for the educational institutes probably is to focus the conceptual development of the students. Technology, as you say, I think is largely being more usable, more easy for the students, and products like Apple, for example, Aman gave an example of Apple technology, but look at Adobe, for example. Earlier, designers used to create persona. Now, Adobe has templates like that. So, you can't, as a designer, impress by design of certain deliverable. You have to think beyond design or presentation layer. So, I think in the institute, building this awareness that taking design to a conceptual part and not limiting it to the surface layer is something that they can do. Second part is the kind of collaboration that is required today in the industry is far more than typically is happening in the institute, especially student groups. They are very close, they have very strong preferences, they tend to work among their own teams and within their departments, for example. But institutes could promote the design people or even all students to work beyond their disciplines with other contemporary, other departments, other professionals, and like that. That is another thing they can do, because today it's phenomenally wide to whom you interact for any given designer to materialize. So that's the second thing that I think they could do. And third thing I would like to communicate is, in India, lot of our designers actually need to effectively communicate design. Doing great design is one part, but communicating that design and why it is great, how it will solve the business problem, is of utmost importance. For example, it's like elevator pitch. If you are traveling with the director of your company or CEO in the elevator, and if he asks a designer, what's it that you are working on? Within 2 minutes, you should be able to communicate what is the key concept of your new design. So this design communication is not English. It's not just about language. It's about conceptualizing it, hierarching the information, the way you present it, all those aspects. I think there could be probably a slightly more emphasis on communicating design is what I would like to suggest.
Thank you, Ganesh. My last set of questions to you, Aman, on what are your key suggestions to industry in terms of how could you collaboratively drive quality to the next level on UI UX profession?
So please, I think this frame will tell you that, okay, what is the expectation of the university? So we have a product team like Adobe on the left side, and Ganesh, who is actually using this, our students to work on your products on the right side. I think this frame itself tells that what the university or academics are looking at. So I think if this frame gets complete in every classroom delivery that we do, I think makes our life very simple. I mean, when the product team and the people like TCS or similar companies, they come on board and start working with our students, then we are able to really create the human resource that's needed for tomorrow's future. Maybe it's UI, UX, or any other career. But I think it's important that all the three players should come forward and work very collaboratively. And of course, I would request all the industry players that education is also about creating the human resource for tomorrow for the industry as well as for the product. Make the product reasonably expensive, which the universities can afford to buy and just take it to the students in a much larger way. I think with these two thoughts, I would say that we can really do a great job. I mean, as the education sector of India, lovely profession, university, LPU. I mean, we know that what we are aiming at, and I think with the support of the industry and the collaboration of the industry, we can definitely reach to any heights, and that's what I want to conclude with.
Thank you so much, Aman. Ganesh, thank you so much for your deliberations, thoughts. It's really resourceful. Would love to have more conversation, but in the interest of time, I'll have to move on to the next session. Thank you so much for your time. It was an absolute pleasure to have you both. Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Same here.
Thank you
Pleasure.
for the opportunity. Thanks, Aman.
Pleasure, Ganesh. Thanks, Supreet.
Thank
Bye.
you. So moving on to the next session is an interesting topic on immersive technologies. We all have been, party to various, entertainment sessions, gaming sessions, whether it's a Bahubali that we watch on our big screens or a small screen, or the Nintendo games or any other PUBGs that we've been playing on our mobile phones. One of the common things that we've always been wondering about is, hey, where does this special effects come from? Who's powering this? What talent goes into it? Is it just about animation? Is it completely automated? Are there new technologies that are coming in? Can we look at augmented realities, virtual realities as an area? So to discuss more about this, I'm going to invite my colleague, Vaishak Venugopal, Head of Solution Consulting, who is the moderator of this session, to invite some of the eminent speakers from the industry to discuss about these areas in length. So the first of the speaker would be Ashwin De Silva, Managing Director, Accenture XR Practice, BI organization of Accenture. Ashwin, welcome to Adobe Education Leaders Summit. And we have Ashish Kulkarni, ex-CEO of Reliance Animation, and he's also a VFX guru, and he's been an advisor to many of the higher education institutions. Ashish, welcome to the show.
Thanks.
We have Dr. Manisha Mohan. She's the Dean of School of Design, University of Petroleum and Energy Studies, Dehradun. And also she's been an industry specialist building various, similar content for organizations like Tata's in the past. Thank you so much for joining us, Ashwin, Ashish, Manisha, and Vaishak. Let me hand over the podium to Vaishak, and Vaishak, all yours.
Thank you so much, Supreet. Well, what a day it has been, right? But wait for it, it's not over yet. We have a very, very powerful panel to discuss one of the most interesting industry, right? VFX, gaming, animation, XR, film. This market, which is already at a hoping $1 trillion business today. How exciting things can get other than this, right? Without any further ado, I would like to, first of all, thank you so much, Ashwin, Ashish, and Manisha ma'am, for taking out time. Really, really appreciate it. But I want to actually start with a bang. What's happening in the industry? What's hot in VFX, animation, gaming, and XR? And why do you think the educators, the students, should care about this industry? If I can start with Ashwin, that'll be great.
Hi, thanks for inviting me for this, and it's a great pleasure to be with all of you. So, in my opinion, 3D animation, video editing, color corrections, it has been there for a very long time for what we've been doing for television and movies. But the industry is opening up, and I will talk about more about it later. So there is the corporates that are using video in a mode of communication. Gaming is picking up a large with the whole onset of immersive reality or virtual reality. So in my opinion, there is a new trend that's going to happen, and there's a huge scope for all of us out there.
Excellent. Thank you for underlining that point, Ashwin. Ashish, sir, if I can move on to you.
Well, I think the good news is that all the verticals are on the rise, and they are upwards of 15 to 20% year on year, at least in India. Some of the verticals are more than 40% growth year on year, especially gaming and XR. When the industry is on the rise, we started with very few educational institutions, actually giving formal education in these verticals. But today, it's the biggest opportunity because the whole world is actually consuming content digitally, and the digital content ecosystem and the digital content economy that is developing demands a large amount of jobs into animation, visual effects, gaming, XR, films, because everything is in the video as a content, or even interactive content, or even the sites, whether it's a government site or a company site, the gamification and the in everything is something which is liked by people. It keeps them engaged. So I think the skills needs to be developed to really see how we can find places in these verticals, which are actually exponentially growing at this point.
Thank you so much, Ashish, sir. As you rightly said, right, a decade ago, we would probably say, can you give me a slide deck or a brochure? Now we say that, hey, I need a video, I need an animation, I need a, that definitely underlines that it's definitely on the race. Manisha ma'am, we can't see you, but I hope you're there and you can hear me. Your thoughts, please. Where is the industry heading, and why should educators and students get there? You are.
Hello, good afternoon, everyone. Yes, for sure. I think it's a very exciting time for animation students. And I can talk from the student perspective, being a dean at UPES. There are a lot more opportunities than there were definitely even a few years ago. There are opportunities because of the growth in gaming and also the animation sector. And also new technology like virtual reality. I think it's not really restricted only to the gaming side, but also people who are in the transportation field. Of course, we have transportation designers and fashion designers, and they're all using games and virtual reality to engage or their audience or maybe promote their concepts. And there are many opportunities for even online internships, because there's a lot of connect between industry and students. And for us, it's beneficial because we want to make industry ready students. For the industry, they want to capture the fresh ideas of our students. So it's a great time. Definitely very exciting.
Thank you, stalwarts of the industry and from the education sector itself. Now that we have underlined that, yes, the opportunities are immense and we need to actually line up the supply. Ashish sir, if I can start with you with the next question, which is, you've been in the industry, you've coached people, you've mentored people, you've hired them. What would be, let's say, top 2 qualities or traits that you would expect from a fresh graduate out of a higher education session? And what would be the top things that you would expect from an industry perspective?
I truly believe that, an artistic skill is something which is extremely important. I will differentiate between artistic skills and the creative skills. And, anybody who have got the creative arts or performing arts, bent of mind or the practice from their childhood does extremely well when they come to our industry. And I think that's one of the abilities that is there, because for the millennial kids, I think that the technology is already given for them. They adapt to technology much faster than anybody else. So I'm not really worried about technology, because the technology will define itself every now and then, and they will, at a flash of a second, they will just adopt it. But the foundation, I believe, is very important. So I think they need to concentrate on their artistic skills, the performing skills. And as they become stronger in those skills, they can apply that to all the production pipelines and all the creations of the products within animation, visual effects, gaming, film, and XR. So I think that is one important thing. Second important thing is their attitude. So it's a combination of attitude plus passion. And I would say it's not only 2 things. My third important thing is ability to work with the teams, because nothing in our process happens individually. So you need to actually give up your egos, be ready to work with teams, because it's like a relay race. You need to really perform in tune with each other. So these are probably the 2-3 traits that I would look at youngsters coming into this industry.
Excellent, right? So artistic skills, ability to work in a team, being a part of a team. Very well said, Ashish sir. Ashish sir, if I can move on to you, what would be the 2 traits that you would look for when you are about to hire from the education?
So I think, we are in a new time, we're a different time. Today, in our industry, we say, who reads an email anymore? Today, millennials are a YouTube generation or a TikTok generation. And our mind span is biteable content, right? With the exponential growth on like Netflix and Amazon Prime, we don't want to read boring PPTs. So there is a huge opportunity of creating a lot of content. And Ashish talked about creative aspects and the artistic skills. I'll touch on the creative skills, but also technical skills. Both are very important. And I think what I really think that the institute should look at is creating a very strong foundation for people who want to do this. I've been in industry for more than 23 years now, but I felt that you get some knowledge in colleges and schools, but you have to go and learn it at the industry itself, and it's on practice or at job. But now with a lot of more things changing, I would say that institutes should focus on teaching the proper basics. People should know basics on lighting, texturing, motion control, even technically in terms of formats, compression, bitrate, scale, because these are so many features available for different mediums available today. And it's not this, right? We are in India, we have a lot of video, television, advertising. There's a lot of opportunities already, but now that's getting multiplied with corporates using videos, gaming industry using 360 stereoscopy and everything else. The opportunities are massive, but I would look at people who have that skill sets, who know their basics. So it's not about learning just tools, but understanding. So because tools change every day, an ability to learn and to try out new things, innovating with what's available is something that I would really look at when I'm looking at people from the industry.
Thank you so much for sharing that, right? As you rightly said, the multi-dimensional learning, right? As one of our earlier speaker also emphasized on, right? Ma'am, if I can move on to you, you have been part of the industry, you have been hiring people. Now you're on the other side of the people developing the next generation for this particular industry. What are your thoughts on this? What should be the holistic skills that students should be developed, and what should be the educator's role in this?
So absolutely. I've played 2 roles in my life, one on the industry side and now as an educator. And I really feel, I second what the panelists have said, and I really feel the most important ability today is the ability to learn new skills because that's what a 21st century learner needs, because everything is changing. Technology will become obsolete, tools will become obsolete, but they need to have the ability to learn, as well as creativity, because you have to innovate, you have to deal with ambiguity. There are so many changes happening all over the world, and you definitely need to create. So if you have these two, I think you will be able to keep developing the new skills that are required, and you will also be able to lead by coming up with new ideas. And also NEP 2020 is really asking for a more holistic individual who has a sensitivity to the environment, who is ethical, and is also has a more broad-based knowledge. So that's the kind of student that we are seeking to develop.
Yeah, thanks for that, ma'am. You mentioned about NEP as well and the importance of creativity. The panelists have almost agreed on something that, hey, we need learnability skill, which is a key aspect, and also creativity, not to be sidelining that. Just one more thought, just adding on to this, ma'am, if you can answer this, which is, how about communication skills? How about storytelling skills? How about presentation skills, right? How about these life skills? I know you're dean of the School of Life as well. How about these life skills, and how that would actually help these students prepare better for this industry of VFX, gaming, XR, film animation?
So they would be, of course, able to lead, to also become inventors, and to become, really talented designers or artists if they are sort of more holistic individuals. And yes, you mentioned School of Life. I do also look after School of Life at my college, and we are looking at building communication skills, leadership skills, as well as areas like persuasive presence. How do you actually close a deal? How do you negotiate? How do you network? These are things that I know my generation of people just learned the hard way. But for our students, since there's so much competition, so much more happening, they need to be prepared. So yes, we have set up a School of Life that will help it gradually building these skills among students and attitudes.
Thank you, Manisha ma'am, on reiterating that. That brings up to me a question. I'm sorry if this is going a little controversial, but I really want all three of your opinion on this. And I will say it out, right? Which is, do you think we talked about creative skills as one of the most important skills. All three of you spoke about this. Do you think this creative education and the overall opportunities are a little underrated in our country? There are many things which people talk about, right? There are many engineering and coding skills and what. But do you think the creative education, the creative skills, and the creative opportunities overall is underrated in your country?
So I can answer this. I think it's definitely underrated because, like I mentioned the first, people learn holistically. They learn all aspects of creativity or production, and they get into industry and then try to find where they actually build their career in. I think what we should do is create professionals or create subject matter experts. When you're doing an expensive production, you want to have the specialists. You don't want anybody and everybody to work in your team. So I don't know whether we are, and I think we are, but we need to actually increase subject matter experts or certification of talent, whether they are doing any particular aspect. So while we do a holistic training, we should at least end, because you can become a doctor in a particular area, right? Similarly, in this industry, we just talk about a cinematographer or maybe somebody doing production or post-production, but a specialist who is given enough of backing from an education system, from universities and from institutes, say that this is my specialist who has complete technical and creative knowledge that is ready for the industry, becomes far better than actually getting a fresher who then trying to learn from scratch. And then, depending on their creativity and other things, actually enables you to say, hey, over 5 years, this guy is good at this particular thing. This is his style. And that's why we wanted this person. We don't find that when we look into some people, freshers that come out, that identify who they are and, becomes a talent that we can pick up immediately.
Yeah, it's important owning the skill. Ashish sir, if you can specifically also touch upon, I know you have been a great advisor for higher education, specifically touch upon the new education policy as well in the same realm.
Yeah, but I would say that, people talk about pre-COVID and post-COVID. I would definitely refer it as pre-NEP and post-NEP, because NEP is going to change the landscape of our industry drastically. You talked about the underrated, like creative education being underrated. It's not only underrated, it's destroyed. In our system we don't have creativity in anything. It's very systematically being destroyed. And there was a time when I was in 10th and 12th, there was always a race to become an engineer, doctor, chartered accountant, or a lawyer. And nobody believed that you can do something else apart from that. And if somebody did BSc like I did, people looked down upon you. And I personally went to more than 100 plus universities in the last 20 years to start creative programs. And whenever I spoke about animation visual effects, they always put me on to the engineering dean. And it took always more than 6 months to 1 year to convince the university that it's about creativity, it's about arts. And even the arts in the vertical in the universities was always referred to as economics, literature, English, and psychology, philosophy. Nobody talked about creative arts and performing arts. So it's not only underrated, it was, there was a huge complex if you are actually going into these kind of areas. But I would say, uh, if you really ask me, uh, what is the most important thing into this area, uh, is people to understand that we are in the business of storytelling. Whether you're doing animation, film, visual effects, gaming, or XR, it's engaging other people into your story, or get them, into the story with an immersive experience. And the aspect of storytelling as a profession is in our genes in India, because we are storytellers for 5,000 to 7,000 years. The stories existed like no other country does, so it's in our genes. We just need to kind of polish them. And the national education policy provides a pathway and a structure to really see how integration can happen. Now it's up to the industry and the educators to collaborate together and make it happen. It's a tough task. The creating a framework and a structure is one thing, but to implement it is going to require a lot of effort. And my belief is, it's like Madam said, every time I hire an artist, I don't look at which degree they've come from. For the last 25 years that I've been hiring people for my studio, I always give them a sculpting test or a painting test or a drawing test, or to do something. And if they are able to do that, the rest we can teach them. And that's why I always went to small pockets like Tanjore, Mahabalipuram, Channapatna, Ramnagaram, Krishnanagar, to hire talent, because they were kids who have never gone to school, but they've always learned from their parents and their uncles and their brothers and sisters to do creative art forms or performing art forms. And they do extremely well on our studio. It's just a matter of teaching them softwares. Their foundation is really strong. What they lack is a communication skill, because many creative guys are having an inferiority complex because of the system that we have. We didn't create a dignity for creative arts and performing arts in this country, including some parts of sports also. Leave aside the cricket in this country. Uh, and that's why it's important for us to build dignity for these verticals. It's important for us to build confidence into them. So give them life skills and give them communication skills. And you see that India emerges as a superpower into this area. And I think the complete structure of schooling, where sixth standard onwards, we have optional subjects where the sports, creative arts, performing arts, or design thinking can be introduced. I would say it should be made compulsory from the KG onwards to have, artistic and performing arts and sports must be made compulsory for everybody, so that that foundation is laid. Starting early in life is always very important in our areas. And I always believe, like we learn mathematics from the KG onwards, or English or anything. If we learn drawing also from that time, we definitely would be able to do the same thing that any other artist does. Because we don't give enough attention to our skill development at that stage, the foundation is becoming weak. At the same time, in the university education, uh, the multidisciplinary is extremely good step that has been taken in the structure. And more than that, I would say the format in which the undergrad programs have been created, where you can actually do 2 semesters in the year 1, and you get a certificate, and then next year you do another 2 semesters and you get a diploma, and then you do 4 more semesters to get a degree. This will allow our students to actually go and intern, and exit and entry points would be multiple for them to come into the university, go back to the internships, or go, and it's a hub and spoke kind of a model where they can work with the industry and come back to the university. And I think that ability to learn things in practical and coming back to the education board, and more so doing that education holistically by learning how to tell the story, how the format works, what is a science behind moving the characters in the right proportion, and perspective to everything. As they actually learn on this side, they practice on this side, it will kind of bring a balance into their career path. And I think this is a big boon to our industry. And I think the right implementation, industry will have to take an initiative to actually collaborate with academia, and universities will also have to be open to create that infrastructure and get people in there.
Yeah, yeah, and that is exactly when, as you said, Ashish sir, that is when India will become that superpower, right? We have that horizon, we have that sun in NEP, that's when we'll become the superpower. Thank you for saying that. Manish ma'am, your thoughts, is it underrated? If yes, what can we do about it?
So I guess it's been a journey. Maybe decades ago, when I was an aspiring designer and I tried to get into NID, and of course I got into NID, there were across the country less than 1,000 candidates applying. And now, if you look at it, there are more than 1,000 design institutes in India. So there is obviously a transformation. There is more interest in creative education. I do talk to a lot of parents who are now okay with their children becoming designers or gamers or animators. Whereas I think I spent a large part of my career explaining being an animator, what do you really do for your living if you are an animator? So that has changed because now there is a lot more respect for creative education. There is a lot more value for it, and I see even in terms of the number of the interest in terms of the candidates coming in, there is a lot more interest in design, creative education, art, for sure. So it is changing. And what Mr. Ashish Kulkarni just said, I think is music to my ears. I think we do need to encourage a lot more industry and academia collaboration that will strengthen the quality of graduates that go out there, and they will go and power the industry for sure.
That's excellent. I mean, it's amazing to see the panel members agreeing on that core concept, right? The hub and spoke model, the industry and academia coming together. Actually, I shouldn't weigh in on this, on the point that Manisha ma'am just spoke about, which is, you just spoke about your 26 years of experience. And now look at the company that you're working for, right? You're working for something called Accenture, who's known for probably for something else, right? So don't you think that that opportunities in this particular sector, especially, is not known to many people, in general as such? Any thoughts on that from your own examples, probably?
So yeah, I mean, I wish I started my career right now when there's so many opportunities and I didn't have a path, and it was just jumping into the ocean, and as you did something good, somebody pulled you up and you grew in the industry. However, I kind of did a lot of transformation right from the day of the tape to digital editing and digital television to SD, HD, 2K, 4K. But I was invited to join Accenture to change the way corporates communicate. Now, there's already 500 channels, and I've been participant in setting up these TV channels in India. And I felt I did that. OTT platforms, high quality content was done. My thing is, how do we change the way we communicate? As I mentioned earlier, My company has 500,000 people across the world, 200,000 people in India. And if you can communicate in a meaningful way, and communication is better than actually sending out monologues or, long text that nobody's going to read. And all corporates are now hiring a lot of millennials. So you have to learn to communicate, and corporate communication or information is moving at such a high speed. I advise banks that, you shoot a video, give a 30-second message on WhatsApp and send it to all your sales managers across the world, across India, is faster than, creating two heavy PPTs and sending across via. So communication on video using, and it's not just communicating video, it's not like putting a camera and doing that, right? Today, my child is, she's only 8.5. It's the quality of content and the capability of doing content which is meaningful, practical, and informative. So, I mean, we only knew about a couple of industries. There are many, many other industries. And Manisha spoke about, there's a correlation between business, creativity, and, the interactivity and training that also happens, which needs all these facets of creativity to be done in. Because if you're a storyteller and you understand the business, it's easier to communicate if you can tell the story correctly.
Yeah, being the storyteller, and the opportunities are all around the place, not just in animation studio, but in any organization who is in need for communication. And actually, I can't think of any organization who doesn't need that, right? I would love to have this conversation going on for eternity, but in the paucity of time, just one last question to all of you. Probably a rapid fire, top of mind is what I would love to hear from each one of you. Let's say you were to bring, we already have AVP with us, right? But let's just say you were to bring in that one reform which would probably better prepare the students for the industry. What would be that one reform?
I would say I will make the creative performing arts and design education compulsory to everyone.
Thank you for saying that, Ashish. Yeah. Manisha, ma'am, if I can move on to you, what would be one reform that you would make?
Bring design education to schools right from primary.
Ashish, if I can move on to you.
So I wouldn't, I'm sure there are already senior folks who have mentioned about reforms, but I would say, with the reforms and with what's there, but if we inculcate in the student to learn their basics properly, apply it correctly, be innovative, right? There are different methodology of using it. Be socially responsible, because if you are sending out a message, be socially responsible and give it your best in terms of quality and skill. If we inculcate the child or the student to be a professional, I think we enhance in quality. There are, I think we can be right now as an industry, we are more doers and, deliveries kind of center people. Right now, I'm seeing a change in in becoming more, it doesn't matter which part of the world you are in. India is going to lead. India can deliver that high quality content. It doesn't care about the budget, but if you do a professional work, a good job, we have the platforms, we have the capabilities, we should do it.
Thank you for saying that. And it is so heartening to hear from all three of you about the great opportunity that this industry has, and the great, thing that is just waiting for us, which is the national education policy, and how the industry as well as the academia should come together to deliver. And, all of you agreeing to the fact that we have to introduce creative education very, very early into the cycle, along with life skills and along with the value of professionalism, as you said, right? So it is amazing and heartening to hear that. Thank you so much for saying this. I can't thank you enough for sharing this whispers of wisdom in our panel today. Thank you so much. And over to you, Supreet. Thank you so much.
Thanks.
Thank you, Vaishak, Ashish, Manisha ji, and Ashwin. Amazing conversation. It's a very power-packed session, I must say. 3 takeaways for me: say versus do ratio needs to be, clear and defined, and we need to start early, catch them young from a creative standpoint, and make an impact at large to society, not just to the university as a system, but go beyond the boundaries of our university system and make an impact. Thank you so much, gentlemen and lady. It was amazing, and I'm sure all our speakers have contributed immensely to your knowledge bank. Thank you all, Vaishak and Ashwin and Ashish. Thank you so much. Now we move on to the next session, ladies and gentlemen. We've had a wonderful lineup of speakers since afternoon. We've had detailing of various topics, right from e-learning to education leaders from the ministry talking about their thoughts from the Rajasthan government, Suchi madam, followed by Dr. Mangal Sundar, who gave his 2 bits about e-learning, content creation, how do you look at delivery, followed by Jayadatta ji, who's an expert in UI UX as an area and careers in design as a space. And then we moved on to architecture, design, and various facets of fashion as a platform. OTT technologies, as a rundown, amazing presentation on Netflix and various opportunities by Vijay as an area. And we looked at UI UX as a career by Ganesh Gaikwad and Aman Mittalji. And now, of course, you all have been evident for the last 40 minutes, an amazing rundown on animation, VFX, and careers in the XR space. Thank you so much for being such a sport, being patient for the last 3 hours on the higher education track. We've come to the end of the higher education track, but hold on, I have an interesting announcement to make on the awards, and we have a Euphoria band performing you in the main hall in the next few minutes. Please do log into the main auditorium. We have the Euphoria band performing from 5 to 6 p.m. Followed by award distribution for certain recognized institutions, both in higher education, K-12, and some of our key education partners. That's pretty much about it from the higher education track. We look forward to your participation in the coming Education Leadership Summit. Stay tuned to Adobe Education Leadership Summit. Thank you so much.
The way we see it, creativity lives not only in the idea, but also in the ways you find to express that idea. Because a good idea deserves to be shared with the world in whichever media will make the most impact. Whether it's a video, a website, posters, flyers, t-shirts, an app, a social media campaign. Whatever it takes to prove your point, get people on board, get people to say, let's make it, get your foot in the door. We believe that when students learn to express themselves in any medium, they'll find their voice. They'll find new ways to make an impact in school and beyond. They'll be the ones with the answers for, how do we make this work better? How do we make it stronger? How do we make it simpler? The students of today are the ones with the new ideas for whatever challenges come next. So let's give them a chance to create a better world.
Currently, students are learning problem-solving skills, communication skills, collaboration, and adding that layer of creativity on there just makes the student much more well-rounded in being able to face the challenges that they are learning.
The finest artists from throughout history use their creativity to produce some of the world's most beautiful and enduring works of art. But creativity goes far beyond artistic expression. It's a skill that enhances the learning of all other essential skills and our ability to shape our world. When we engage in creative thinking, we solve modern problems in new and important ways. From tackling humanitarian challenges to designing smart cities that work for everyone. Creativity relates to and enhances other important skills like critical thinking, communication, and collaboration. Creative and critical thinking complement each other. Creative thinking helps students develop new insights into content and information. When we apply creative thinking in our communication, we find new and surprising ways to share our ideas with others. By collaborating creatively, we tap into the insights of others and come up with new ways to solve problems together. Teachers all around the world, just like you, are figuring out how to develop these skills in every subject area. They know that creative approaches to learning deepen learning itself. According to Starko, a creative mind looks at things differently in fun and unique ways. It's naturally more engaged with the subject or content in question, more adaptable to any situation, and able to solve more problems within any discipline.
So many students are trained to study for tests. They think that the longer they study, the deeper the learning. But deeper learning happens when we really grapple with a problem or an idea. We dig into it by looking at it from multiple perspectives, making connections, and exploring a variety of solutions. The deeper learning isn't studying, it's creating.
Students as content creators and global collaborators have the power to make digital artifacts that can serve as representations of understanding and shared experience.
In my own teaching, I've seen that creativity is definitely the gateway to deeper learning, because we can teach a theory, but students won't really thoroughly understand it until they can actually practically apply it and create something that embodies that theory.
There are frameworks and processes that help us as educators to understand and develop creative thinking skills in our students. According to Bloom's taxonomy, the most complex and abstract of the higher order cognitive skills is creative thinking. Engaging students in learning experiences which require creative thinking leads to solutions or products that are novel, good, or useful. Creativity can be learned over time and applied using processes that help scaffold and guide our creative thinking. Processes like design thinking, the engineering design processes, or the artistic design process have been engaging learners in developing creative thinking for years.
By bringing creative thinking in, we know that our students are going to end up with more skills, those soft skills, which are actually what employers are looking for.
My students' critical thinking, collaborative, and communication skills have all developed because of engaging in creative processes. Creative processes really require us to concurrently tap into the 4 C's at one time. You become a better communicator, you become a better critical thinker just by doing creative work.
Emphasis on creativity provides purpose for inquiry-driven practices and project-based learning by giving students the opportunity to engage in work that is relevant, interesting, and connected to the human experience. Through storytelling and creative expression, students and teachers are seeing how and where their voices fit in the global conversation, and that they are needed.
Understanding virtually any content can be enhanced by using it in creative ways. But in addition, essential social and emotional skills can be strengthened through the use of creative activities. Creativity requires persistence. It requires keeping going in the face of obstacles. It often requires cooperation with other people to solve problems that are complex enough that no single person can do them on their own.
Each process encourages and empowers students to look at a problem in new ways in order to arrive at multiple solutions to any problem.
Hi everyone, thanks for watching. Click the link in the description below to explore more free online professional development, and click the link on screen to subscribe to the channel for more videos.